Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners special meeting. It's Tuesday, September 11th, 2018. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good evening. Let the record reflect Commissioners Sobroff, Bonner, and Goldsmith are present, and we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Today is September 11th. I think it's appropriate, I think all of us think it's appropriate to take a moment of silence, a moment of respect for people who you feel you want to do it for the first responders that were engaged in September 11th, for the victims, for their families, for the survivors and their families. So let's take a moment of silence and honor and remembrance. Thank you, everyone. Is the council member here yet? Not yet. When the council member comes, we will have the council member comments. Right now, we're going to start with item number 4 because this group has a very early morning project they've got to do. And so we'll start with the report from the commanding officer, West LA Area and Operations West Bureau. Chief, do you want to make an introduction?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm proud to introduce I know this is not the first time this group has met this man or his team, but welcome him back, and that is Deputy Chief Justin Eisenberg from Operations West Bureau, and I'll allow him to introduce his leadership team.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Commissioners. It's an honor to be here today. I do have my entire West Bureau team here. They're not all going to speak. We're going to hear from the captain of West LA. Yeah, in the interest of time and brevity. But I do want to tell you who else is here in the audience from West Bureau, in case anybody has any questions for them. We have the captain of Hollywood Division, the tallest captain on the LAPD in the back of the room, Captain Palka, almost 7 feet tall. We got the captain of Pacific Division, who is a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy as well, proudly serving his country. He is Captain Setzer. Also, I've got Captain West LA Division and her partner here, Captain Thomas, is the area CO. That's good to hear. He must be doing a great job. I got Captain Wendling, the patrol commanding officer, in the back. Commanding officer of Wilshire Division is also here, Captain Odo. Thank you, Tony. I got the commanding officer of Olympic area, which is Captain Dave Kowalski in the back. And I've got finally the acting commanding officer of LAX Field Services Division, which is Lieutenant Steve Ruiz. Steve, thank you. Thanks for being here, everybody. So I just want to make a few brief remarks, and then I'll introduce my partner, Commander Rob Moreno. Both of us are brand new to West Bureau, coming from new assignments. I've been to West Bureau on the ground for about 4 weeks now, as well as my partner, Commander Moreno. Commander Moreno is newly promoted to the rank of commander from missionary, where he was the area commanding officer. I'm going to give you some brief information about West Bureau, tell you a few things about some challenges that we have. I'm going to ask my commander to say a few words, and then I'll be turning it over to
When
Captain
you're
Thomas.
at the microphone, we're going to ask everyone to be quiet so we can hear what you have to say, whatever you have to say. The thing is that you're not at the microphone now, and Justin Eisenberg is, so let's listen.
Thank you, sir. So West Bureau is a very large command. It has a population of 840,000 people, and it's 124 square miles. And you're going to hear from Captain Val Thomas in a moment. And Val's got one of the biggest commands in the city. It's 64 square miles, so it's almost half the size of West Bureau. It does have 5 geographic areas. You just met all the commanding officers. There's also a traffic command here, West Traffic. West Traffic is under a different chain of command now based on the reorganization. But we have over 1,400 officers, and in that group are 155 detectives. So it's a full-service bureau. We have a homicide unit that's centralized and a sexual assault unit that's centralized. And then each area has their own detective squad rooms, patrol operations, gang operations, vice, and command staff. In 2012, just to give you a perspective of the workload here, they had 239,000 calls for service, and last year they had a 10% increase from that at 265,000. And this year, citywide, we're seeing the same trends in West Bureau. Calls are really
Does that include
up.
911 or no?
Yes, sir.
That includes 911?
Yes, sir. That's just for West Bureau.
Okay.
Some bright spots for West Bureau: homicides are down compared to 10 years ago. At this time, 10 years ago in 2008, we had 35 homicides in West Bureau. And as of a year to date, we have 54% fewer homicides at 16. I'm very happy to say that. But every one of them is obviously too many. The challenges that we're facing particularly are property crime, burglaries and thefts, and also some violent crime, particularly aggravated assaults. Robberies are also a challenge in West Bureau, but we're seeing pretty similar numbers to last year. We're starting to close that number down. So those are some of our challenges. My partner's going to talk a little bit about some of our community efforts, and then I'm going to turn it over to Captain Thomas for about 30 seconds to give you some highlights of West LA.
Great.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. As my partner indicated, my name is Robert Marino. I'm the newly appointed commander at West Bureau. I just came over from Mission Area, where I was the area commanding officer for about 2.5 years. One of the things that we're trying to do in West Bureau is not only engage with our community, but build a better partnership. I'm very pleased to announce we're currently in a Citizen Academy out of Operations West Bureau, where we have approximately 85 people in that program. And one of the goals and what we're trying to do is put together a volunteer citizens on patrol. So part of our philosophy in West Bureau is having each of the area commanding officers engage in that philosophy, from volunteers on patrol, cops on a corner, walk in a beat with a cop, or walk a block with a captain. So that's the chief and my philosophy as we move forward into the remainder of this year and next year, is building a relationship, making us better, and understanding one another on where our differences are and how we can have a better and safer community. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Val Thomas, who's the area commanding officer of West LA, who she'll give you a quick overview of West LA Division.
Okay. If there's an empty seat next to you, will you raise your hand, please?
Seats here.
So if any of the people from outside want to come in and sit down, let's take a minute and do that.
Thank you.
Sure. Again, if there's an empty seat next to you, please raise your hand.
Mr. Kahn, right here.
Thank you.
Good evening. The chief has already talked about some of our crime challenges, being burglaries, burglary from motor vehicles, as well as our aggravated assaults. But I would like to say, as it relates to our aggravated assaults, almost 50% of those are involving folks that know one another, acquaintances, family, or domestic. So these can be prevented. So some of the things we are doing is having a counselor that works with our domestic assault response team to go out to the community and talk about some proactive, some prevention that can be done, so that you'll give you other tools to use rather than resulting in violence. We know we can't do our job without the community. We know we can't, and we've developed some really good relationships here within West LA. Primarily, well, specifically tonight, I'll talk about our Pacific Palisades Task Force on Homelessness. That is a group, a community group that works hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder with our beach detail officers along Pacific Coast Highway in Pacific Palisades. And they are primarily reaching out to our homeless community. And this has been going on since approximately 2016, and since then, they have been able to, along with us, this collaboration, we've been able to find housing for over 80 individuals and shelter for others, getting them off of the streets. And I think of importance is that year to date, there's been a 17% decrease in crime along that area. So we know that developing strong partnerships with our community is key. And this is one of those community partners that will hold us accountable. Yes, Sharon will hold me accountable, and I think that's a good barometer of a relationship. So we appreciate our community here. They're very supportive.
Thank you, sir. That concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
We do have one public comment card, sir.
Okay,
We have Jonathan Foster.
Mr. Foster?
Hi, Jonathan Foster.
This is on item number 4.
Oh, we're on number 4.
Yes, sir.
No comment.
Okay, thank you.
We do have another one, I'm sorry. We have Hamed Khan.
Mr. Khan, on number 4, and this is the only speaker card on number
Yes,
4?
sir.
Okay, okay. Mr. Khan, good evening, sir.
Hey everybody, my name is Hamid Khan. I'm with a group called the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. We have a huge membership on the west side of Los Angeles as well. What you didn't hear from the commanding officer in their presentation is, and today we are remembering 9/11, that what has really happened over the last 17 years. This is the LAPD's massive architectural surveillance and infiltration and intelligence gathering that has been taking place. And while this has been going on in the context of fighting terrorism, but what we see is clear evidence of racial profiling and a license to racially profile for many communities. In 2013, the Inspector General released an audit of the Suspicious Activity Reporting Program, which showed the black population on the west side is about 2 to 3%. But what it showed was that these secret files that were opened, they identified individuals as black, which was close to about 10 times than the population in West LA. Not only that, you may have seen some taglines which say, "See something, say something," right? Which they actively recruit community members and which creates a license to racially profile. And what happened was that over half of those suspicious activity reports coming from the west side were not filed by cops, but were filed by individuals. So when you look at the intersection of racial profiling, when you look at the intersection of race, and when you look at the intersection of opening of these secret files, and who's calling whom as suspicious, we see an overwhelming evidence of racism and racial profiling. I think the challenge is for this community that whether they want to be known as a community of racists, or they want to be known as a community that is fighting back racism, that is joining up people and fighting back racism. So that is a challenge that we bring to this community. And this is all grounded in facts. This is all grounded in numbers. This is not something that we are making up. I have copies of the Inspector General's 3 years of audit.
Thank you, sir.
It's all racial profiling. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move now to item number 2, which is the consent agenda items. Do we have any do we have any comments on any of the items 2A, B, C, or D?
We have one card on A, one card on B, and 3 cards on D.
Okay, so let's have a motion to approve C.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, so this is you have one card on A, the donation for $145. Who is that?
Mr. Herman?
Mr. Herman? And also, is Mr. Herman also on B and D?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Herman, you can go A. Mr. Herman, you can go 2A, 2B, 2D. Where is he? Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As to my concerns regarding Valley traffic, my opinion is that for years of lack of controlled trafficking, what do I mean by that? Well, with such monetary donations at simply $145 and 1 penny for the record, Valley Traffic Advisory needs to be retrained so they can go out and write up more tickets so people can safely walk across the street. Simply can cross an intersection without having some type of traffic interaction with law enforcement who drive too fast and have DUIs. Also that of the public who you've heard lately have been the crackdown of these racing and speeding cars. So I'm in favor of having the reimbursement for the one sergeant of $145 for traffic division as set forth.
Okay, you want to go to B now?
B as in my boy. Relative to monetary police foundations of $2,000 for the purchase of food and drinks and supplies for the so-called Metropolitan Division fundraiser. Again, this is regarding the mounted platoon officers who ride their horses down First Street and Main Street where I see them, like I passed them up this afternoon getting over here. And, you know, I find it really a suffering to the public who have catastrophically witnessed injuries of horses due to infrastructure, potholes, and lack of resurfacing of our public streets. I think the LAPD needs to investigate whether or not the report is adequate, because after all, you know, when I was up at the Elysian Park ceremony for our 5K, you know, I didn't see any horses up there, and that would have been a nice place to engage community fundraising for those horses to, I still got 39 seconds, sir.
Yeah, if you'll stay on the topic.
Well, I am. So, again, these so-called mounted platoons for the purchase of food and drinks is appropriate, and we should immediately raise our hands to a quick fourth and vote yes that reimbursement is adequate.
Let's go to number
Maybe
D.
just say. Good. What item, sir?
D, you want to go to D?
D for dummy. All right. Peter, over here, please. Yeah, train ride. I know it gets you a little tired. You have to move around. Regarding August 31st, relative monetary donations of $3,000. Again, the Los Angeles Police Foundation, associations of promotional receptions. Well, you know what a reception is, right? That's when you're invited. And as long as there's going to be a benefit for the Los Angeles Police Department as set forth with the report to accept the donation, I think you should, for the record, let the public know that the reception is an open invitation for them to accompany this so-called situation of the $13,000 for the fundraiser. You see, ever since I've known about the Los Angeles Police Foundation for costs and association fees and permits process and promotional receptions, you know, it's difficult to understand that, you know, getting to the receptions with no parking arrangements and overdraft or cover parking fees for us should be tolerated. You know, coming this long distance from where I come from, there in LA, being homeless, it takes a great deal of understanding and compassion. So I'm all forward in the monetary donations for the department's report,
Okay.
for board action in approve of the department's report to accept this donation, Mr. Sobra. And hopefully with your business and organization, you can donate $100,000 on my behalf. Thank you. Is that it?
Any other speakers on,
We have no speakers, no other speakers on 2A and 2B.
okay, we have a motion for approval of 2A and B.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, and on 2D, you have one other speaker?
We have two speakers. We have Mr. Novick and Jonathan Foster.
Mr. Novick? This is 2D.
2D, yeah. It's the $13,000 donation from the Los Angeles Police Foundation. For more than 2 years, I've asked the Police Commission to keep some kind of tally of the amount of money that's being donated week after week, and you just rubber stamp the acceptance of these donations. particularly from the Los Angeles Police Foundation, which I understand receives money from a foundation that Mr. Sobroff is involved in. We've asked for some clarification of that. This one in particular is for 2 promotional receptions, and I don't understand why you have to promote the Los Angeles Police Department. So I think that you should reject this donation. The LAPD takes more than 50% of the operating budget of the entire city year after year.
Did you say 15 or 50?
5-0.
Oh, it's more like 15, but it's okay.
And
Go ahead.
so I think that you should turn this donation back to the Police Foundation. I don't think that you have to spend money on promotional receptions for the police department. If you want to improve police-community relations, you can do so by having a different relationship with the community. So I know you have a new member here, Mr. Bonner. I would ask you in particular to tally up the money week after week before you just rubber stamp these donations. It's tens of thousands of dollars every week that are being donated to the police department on top of the substantial amount of money that the LAPD takes from the general fund of the city. And if you want to improve policing in the city, the way to do it is by spending the money more wisely on the actual needs of people in the city for housing, for education, for jobs. And if you did so, you would find a drastic reduction in crime. People are being criminalized for their poverty week after week, and nothing's being done about it.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
I'd like to, first of all, thank Mr. Novick, Mr. Khan, and Mr. Smith, awesome people that have been in here well before I ever got. I'm Jonathan Foster. You know, it's not a crime to be rich exactly, but it's almost borderline a crime to be rich contributing to the Los Angeles Police Foundation, a nonprofit organization, having it fund LAPD programs.
If you want people to hear it, speak into the mic, okay?
Yes, sir. And the nonprofit having it fund LAPD programs that are borderline unconstitutional is a little bit absurd. You know, parts of my life have fallen apart. I can't do all the research, but I did find out you've never been a cop.
No.
And you make the decisions for what the police are going to do?
No.
Yeah, you do. You haven't changed the stuff that's going on with the police. Actually, Shane's not a police officer. I haven't been able to do the research on. You guys are running the police department. You haven't walked the street with a gun or a badge or a uniform. And this is a real problem. And I saw the budget was $9 billion, and the LA Council raising their income. This is where the problem is. And then we've got people like he keeps talking about the data mining or the anyways, you know what I'm talking about now. So this reception is 2 promotional receptions. You've got enough money. From what I've seen, you were flying around on a helicopter deciding they were going to build another NFL stadium, and you got enough money, buddy, to pay $13,000 out of your pocket. And you never walked the street with a badge or a gun or a uniform. I come out of a family that has 60 straight years of service in the United States military. My sister's been working on Fort Leavenworth for 22 years. Her husband's a 30-year tank platoon commander. Their 3rd child is getting training on Fort Knox. We're still serving today. That's why I can just, as I continue to get off the drum set and expect you, I can just roast you like a pig.
Thank you. Okay, is there anything else on 2D?
We have no other comment cards.
Okay, we have a motion for approval on 2D. We have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. We'll go to item number 3, and that there are 3 items. Well, I'm sorry, there are 4 items, A, B, C, and D, and there are. Let's see. On 3A, I don't believe a report is necessary. Do any of the commissioners think a report's necessary? Do we have any public comments on 3A?
We have Wayne Spindler.
Mr. Spindler? Is he here? No, he's got a card, but he's not here, so that's a real trick. Is he here?
He's here.
Okay. Mr. Spindler, this is item number 3A.
Okay, yeah, it's just very confusing out here because I'm unable to find anything out there.
We're on 3A.
Yeah, I'm looking for the complimentary lunch that was promised. All right, so let's see here. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you so much, and I see that we have a new puppet on the commission. Thank you. So, false alarms. Yes, we do have a lot of these false alarms. So what happens is uncollectible false alarms are quite common. And the reason is because the DWP continues to turn off, on, and on the electricity in all of the commercial businesses. For example, my friend here, Mr. Spinner, has a commercial building that's been in the family for 40 years. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten as much money as Soborov because we haven't learned to steal like him, but we're getting there. So we have, on occasion, the power goes off, and so when it does, it goes ring, 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 ring when it goes back on. And then it becomes a false alarm. That is the fault of the DWP, sir. That is not the fault of these honorable men and women in business. People in business are not turning their alarms off. Everybody follows the rules. The problem is, so now, April 14th to September 14th, everybody stopped paying for these false alarm fines. And the reason is because I started emailing everybody saying, hey, everybody. They said, what? They said, you don't have to pay because Steve Soborov doesn't pay his animal licenses, so you don't have to pay your false alarm receivables. And they said, well, I'll be goddamn, thank you for that. And that's why we want you to make a friendly amendment. Amend this motion that nobody ever will pay again an uncollectible false alarm. And also waive all of our property taxes for this year too. And we would greatly appreciate that. And we know that Steve has enough money to pay for all of this. Thank you so much, sir.
We have any other comment cards on 3A?
We have no other comment cards on 3A?
We have a motion for approval of 3A.
So moved.
Second? Anyone opposed? All in favor? Okay. On item 3B, which is relative to the jail homeless in-reach program, we would like to have a brief report, and I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Goldsmith. Been involved with this? Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Good evening, everyone, and good evening, Commissioners. Good evening, Inspector General, and good evening, Chief.
Speak into the mic, okay?
Sure. And good evening, Chief. First, I'd like to say introduce a couple of people with me tonight. Our boss, Commander Fontanetta, also Assistant Commanding Officer of Custody Services Division is Captain Gary Newton. And the heart and soul of the program, the in-reach program for Custody Services Division is Senior Detention Officer Sergio Castrillon. And I am Captain Rolando Solano, Commanding Officer of Custody Services Division. Thank you. First, I'd like to say that the Homeless In-Reach program, by reaching a population of people who are at a very vulnerable point in their lives, the In-Reach program is a great opportunity to provide services for the homeless community at the onset of their entry into what we do as police officers as part of the criminal justice system. The department will continue this program in its current form, Fridays and Mondays, at the regional jails. CSD has developed outstanding partnerships with CD1, in particular Jose Rodriguez. I believe we saw him here tonight. He's here. Thank you for your partnership, as well as with our in-reach providers. Sure. CSD is working closer with our in-reach partners in an effort to establish better metrics for the program. And for us taking a very deep dive into the numbers, we know that we are not reaching the entire homeless population that comes within the jail facilities. Within the last few weeks, we did approve a new classification assessment form, which now includes specific questions to quantify with a high level of accuracy the number of homelessness that come into our care. Specifically, the detention officers, when they first come to us, we ask them, are you experiencing homelessness? And also, too, when they go to the medical staff, they ask them a question in terms of if they're experiencing homelessness as well. So with that said, we're ready to answer your questions.
Great, thank you.
really glad to see this program. Appreciate the department's efforts, proactive efforts, both to create it and to especially recently work to improve the program. It's, on the face of it, it seems certainly positive. I have a couple questions. Do you know what percentage of arrestees are homeless, or at least by the method that you've got here?
Yes, we can give you that number approximately.
So, Commissioner, good evening, Commissioners. According to our statistics, we, since January 27 of 2017 through July 30th of 2018, we came in contact with 1,142, 2,591 inmates throughout the 3 regional jails, which is Metropolitan Detention Center, Valley Jail Section, and 77th. Out of those 2,591 that we came into contact, 1,641 consented to be seen by the social workers. So that was throughout the LA City Jail.
Great, and that's a huge percentage. I mean, certainly compared to other types of contact the department has with people experiencing homelessness. So I think that definitely shows that the folks are definitely willing to get services. But do you happen to know the percentage of arrestees who are homeless?
And this is where I go back into taking a deep dive into the metrics, because the way we do it now is when somebody comes in through the booking process, we capture it on what we have separate cards, and so the detention officers will come in at about an hour or so before the program starts, does a hand search to see who's actually booked with a certain, in our lingo, it's 1942 transient if they're homeless. So that's when they say, okay, no, I don't live anywhere. But we know a lot of them will still give an address, just so this way it's where they get their mail, even though they may not live there, but still they're truly homeless. Those are the ones that slip through the cracks that we'll never catch. However, most recently, within the last couple of weeks, we wound up getting our paperwork approved to go ahead and add those homeless questionnaires at the onset. So we're capturing that initial data. One of the next thing about once you get that data on paper, how do you get it into the entry system? We have a records management system, which is something internal, which is newer to the department. The jails were the first to install this system and to capture as much data as possible. So once we get the software hooked up, so now we can, when those entry forms are done and we can data punch it in, we'll be able to do it much better, because otherwise that form goes individually, and we have to wind up first capturing it electronically. So those are some of the minutia that we need to do to make sure nobody slips through.
Are there best practices in jail inReach, or are we sort of setting the path?
Well, for us, we're sort of setting the path because the Sheriff's Department has a jail inReach, but it's usually based on post-arraignment. We're pre-arraignment, so nobody's been in front of a judicial magistrate or a judge before. And so what happens a lot of times when they go to the sheriffs, the first thought is, we'll let the sheriffs do it since they already have their program. But as you know, a lot of people either they bail out or they wind up getting OR'd, or the judge says, okay, I'm not going to hold the charges, and so out they go. So we're missing that population that doesn't truly enter into the sheriff's custody system, because once they are held to answer and they're going to stay in that facility, they'll get the services. So there's a number who don't.
Other big cities, Chief, do you know of any other big cities or medium-sized cities that have jail inReach programs like this?
Yes, Commissioner, there are some smaller cities across the country that have continued to experiment and invite outreach workers, mental health workers, service providers, including the faith community, to have this, at this juncture, this critical moment, an effort to have an intervention, to provide service information.
Good.
Other questions?
It looks like something that's very successful. To be congratulated on both you and the people that say that they're interested in being helped. I think that's a big step, and hopefully we can expand it. Chief, any comments from your perspective on it, priority-wise?
The department continues to be encouraged by, and we are committed to having this shared responsibility of allowing and inviting outside providers into our facilities to have an opportunity to try to provide services, try to provide a lifeline. One of the challenges that Captain referenced, I'll just reference you to the next report dealing with homelessness. You'll see a report that shows nearly 7,000 arrests in the first 6 months of this year of misdemeanor and felony arrests that are persons that are, in that calculus, we believe are homeless. Yet the jail division, because of, again, these are well-intended efforts, but imperfect systems, identified about 2,500. So we are truly in a magnitude of scale issue. Commissioner, when you asked what percentage of arrestees are homeless, we're still working on systems to develop that and to have a greater understanding.
Do you also track when they're out? I mean, check recidivism?
Secondly, that is the other area of the outcome once we've had this intervention.
Yeah.
The report that was given to you gave one example of an incident where we believe we saw success because the person acted on the information provided. We're working with Lawson. We'll continue to work with our outreach providers to better understand what's the outcome of that intervention, but also whether it be a reoccurrence of arrest or a positive outcome where housing or supportive services are provided. So this is very much in its infancy, and at the same time, I congratulate the Jail Division, Custody Services, and their ability to find staffing in all candor from their own existing resources in a time when we are in a compromised position as far as the number of facilities that we're running and operating, and the service times of what it's taking for us to manage the 80,000 plus individuals that are arrested over the course of a year. So this is a juggling act that I think speaks well for the values of this command in recognizing it has a role that can potentially help this population.
And this is just to end this on, we're not the county jail system, we're the city jail system. We hold people for a very short period of time. So you have to go in, you have to get their permission, and you have to really lay it on within, what, 24 to 48 hours because they're out, correct?
Correct. We hold for 48 up to 96 hours on the long weekends, holiday weekends, and then that's our mandate. We're considered a Type 1 facility in the state of California for correction custody institutes.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comments on this?
If I could.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. So certainly, I mean, on the face of it, it seems positive, and absolutely appreciate the dedication and support that you all are providing. And it does seem like good work is happening. I hear the police chief saying that without sort of proper systems in place, it's hard to determine exactly, what the success rate is and what the metrics are. So I totally appreciate that. And you talk about here wanting to get those data systems in place in order to figure out the effectiveness of the program, and then you can decide, whether and how to expand it. So I think that's the right sequence of events. But if it is working, certainly I think we'd all be motivated to see how to expand it, ideally in partnership with community organizations to reduce the use of reduce the increase in the use of LAPD personnel and the LAPD cost. But in any case, do you have a sense of when these data systems will be in place and when you can start tracking and when we could get a report back to the Commission on your determination of its effectiveness and the types of opportunities to improve and expand the program?
6 months to a year with the system that we have with RMS to try to get that to marry into the handwritten sheets for the data entry. So we're looking at that time because we're allowed to make certain injects in terms of changing with the software. Right now the focus is on West Traffic Division is working with the RMS system, putting that into the traffic systems to get more efficiencies out of the traffic operations. So we're timed with that company.
Okay. So could we have a report back in 6 months just on the progress of that and then go from there? Is that
Great.
fair? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it, Commissioner?
Yes.
Do we have any public comment cards on this?
Yes, sir, we have 4 comment cards.
Okay.
We have Mr. Novick and Mr. Herman.
If there's an empty seat next to you, will you please raise your hand? So we have, if anybody that's in the back or outside the room that wants to sit, there's one here in the first row also. There are 3 or 4 empty seats. Come on.
Yeah, there's something a little chilling about talking about in-reach as opposed to outreach, in the sense that you've locked people up and criminalized them for their condition of being poor and homeless, and then you're reaching in to provide them with services. I just want to point out that the single example of the success you give, it says that that case cost about $1,500 to arrest, process, and house the person for a couple of days in the jail. You talk about 80,000 people having been arrested. That's $120 million that were spent, if that's a typical figure, $1,500 a piece. I think that money can be much better spent on actually providing housing for people and ending their homelessness.
Mr. Herman? Mr. Herman, followed by Isaac Bryan and Wayne Spindler.
Mr. Herman?
Daddy.
You guys want to get in line so we can save the travel time here? Mr. Bryant, Mr. Spindler?
So what do we know about homelessness? Well, for one, this is being homeless. Always be prepared when you're at home, which is the street. I've seen no exception to the rule, other that the courts have upheld that the statute on the ground that without more homelessness, who would be advocating? Who would prevent homeless people from violent encounters by means of those who guard them, the police department? I know what it's like to be homeless. I'm creative at being homeless. By design, I believe Mr. Sobroff and Mr. Tifang had insinuated that I should be homeless, for the record. Do you recall back in that time of 2012 when I was hospitalized and put into the metropolitan facilities? I was homeless
I wasn't
by
the police
design.
commissioner then.
So, again, the effect of political and economic change involves myself, a homeless man, in danger by the securities and insecurities of law enforcement. As you see, although I'm with a companion, my true beloved lover dog, Ruff, she and I, together, under the state and by the state, may subject you to the law, and that's through the Department of Justice. So, again, advocacy and the use of force by law enforcement is so hypocritical. What over 1,000 people that you initiated help with? Look into your pamphlet out there on page 2, where you talked about the 44%. Talk about that. Mr. Tifang knows exactly what the hell I'm talking about, and I sure hell know what it's like to be homeless. So 42 USC 1983, politely, fuck you.
Well, that's a lot of class, though.
Mr. Bryant? Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Commissioners. Is mic on?
Yeah.
Commissioner Goldsmith, I'd like to start by answering your question. About 20% of all bookings are homeless bookings. I have every arrest, every booking from 2010 all the way to the first 6 months of this year. I'm a co-lead on the $1 Million Hoods Project at UCLA. This is something we have to question as a city. It's something this department has to question. It's something we all have to question as a people. We criminalize poverty, and we have for decades. That being said, let me be very, very, very clear. The inside of a cell is not the right place for service delivery. It's incredibly difficult to treat trauma in a place, in an environment that is traumatizing. That being said, people do need help, and we need to do something about the nearly 20,000 homeless bookings a year, including family members of my own. So thank you, Commissioner Goldsmith, for looking into this and even bringing it up as an issue. There are 2 models. Our neighbors, Long Beach and Santa Monica, Whole Person Care at the county level is working with them to do similar programs. I encourage you to have meetings with them. I had a meeting with them this morning in preparation for this. Chief Moore, I saw a recent editorial of yours that talked about ending and clearing bench warrants for those that are experiencing homelessness. That's a great idea. We need to make it more than an idea. We need to act on these things. This report was not enough. This program is not strong enough yet. We need to do the right thing. We need to get people services on the streets, and we need to get people services whenever they need them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan, for all your help with this. I appreciate it.
Mr. Spindler?
Yes. Okay, and now for the reality check, yes. So we went ahead, me and my friend here, we read your bullshit report. That's why I'm a bull. For the record, I'm a bull. Yes, and we notice all of your felony arrests are down or up only 9%, while the felonies are up 44% according to your little chart. So again, you continue to fail And the reason that you continue to fail is because you need new leadership. And me, and of course my friend here, have offered you that leadership, but you continue to refuse. And what we tried to do before the report was made, we tried to get Ms. Jamala to become the first woman police chief in the city, but that was blocked. And the reason it was blocked is because you only will allow a white male to be the police chief. That is the first problem. And the reason you will only allow a white male to be...
Mr. President, stay on topic.
Well,
So this is your last warning, stay on topic.
see the violence here, people. This is the problem with the report. The report is complete shit. It's all bullshit from A to Z. We call it Z over there in England, yes, where Soborov's from. So we continue to know that crime is out of control. We continue to know arrests are up slightly. And we continue to know that homelessness is up. And what I have, Mr. Spindler has in his car, is the real report, the one you didn't give the public tonight. And we have the report. All that you have to do right now, Mr. Soborov, is say, I want to see this evidence. Yes, you don't want to see the evidence. You can't handle the truth. Because what the truth is, you're a failure. You're a failure and you're puppets. And that's why we bring puppets. Everybody talk through a puppet to these puppets. Thank you.
Try and stay on the topic. Otherwise, during public comment, you can say whatever you want. Is that it?
That's it, sir.
Okay. Do we have a motion for approval, basically to come back with another report in 6 months on the progress?
Thank you. So moved.
Yeah. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have a report on the 2018 second quarter report on homelessness. Commander?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Dominic Choi. I am the department's homeless coordinator. Tonight, I have some partners here with me that I'd like to introduce. So I have Guido O'Neill from the City Attorney's Office. I have Nathaniel Vergro from LASA. And I also have Jose Garcia from Sanitation with us tonight to do this co-presentation and answer any questions you guys may have.
Okay.
There's a lot of data in this report. There's 6 months data, there's quarterly data. So what I'd like to do is just, the trends are fairly similar, so I'm gonna just talk about quarterly data, comparing 2017 second quarter versus 2018 second quarter. If you have any questions on the 6 month data, I'd be happy to answer it, and then we'll go from there, okay? All right, so let's start with victimization. Second quarter data, we had an overall increase of 30% homeless victims of Part 1 crime. It's 140 victims of Part 1 crime increase in the second quarter comparison. That primary increase resulted or was a cause of victims of robbery, an increase of 33, and victims of aggravated assault, an increase of 39 incidents. Looking at our felony arrests for second quarter comparisons, we had an 11% increase of our felony arrests. These are felony open charge and felony warrant arrests. That was caused by an increase of 38 robbery arrests, increase in 26 aggravated assault arrests, and then also 36 other type of felony warrant arrests. Looking at our misdemeanors, I'll go over 6 months and second quarter here, because in the 6 month comparison, we actually had an increase of 15% in misdemeanor warrants and open charge arrests. But if you look at our second quarter data in our comparison, we had a zero change. That zero change was a result of an increase of assault arrests and narcotics warrants arrests, but also a significant decrease in open charge narcotics arrests. Our release from custody is basically our citations and what some would consider quality of life issues or citations. Note that our cutoff date for this data was May 11th. We don't have the full second quarter. This is only because we weren't able to retrieve that data from the courts. But we are comparing apples to apples because we used the same cutoff date in 2017. So if you look at our second quarter data, we had a decrease of 41%, or 461 less RFCs issued in the second quarter of 2018 versus 17. That primary decrease was for those sections that I think we're all very familiar with, the 4118 A and D, blocking the sidewalk, sitting, sleeping, lying the sidewalk. We had a decrease of 245 citations. We also had a decrease of 94 citations or RFCs for shopping cart violations and 64 decrease in drinking in public. So personal service citations, we did have an increase of 92 citations or 41%, and the primary increase in this came from riding a motorized bicycle on a freeway. We had an increase of 18 or 43 citations for that. We also had 100 citations issued related to vehicle code violations. That's no registration, no license, and what was the third one? No registration, no license, no insurance. Okay, moving on to our mental evaluation unit. Their responses continue to be about 30% of all of their crisis calls are calls for those experiencing homelessness or in crisis, and they experience homelessness. Our second quarter numbers, we had an increase of about 24% of homeless-related crisis calls by our MEU. We went from 1,635 calls to 2,025 calls in the second quarter. And then looking at our use of forces. Citywide use of forces for second quarter, we had a decrease of...
So if you want to speak, just fill out a card and then you can come up to the microphone and everybody can hear, but if you disrupt the meeting, then we can't proceed,
So we had an overall decrease in our use of forces citywide of approximately 5% if you're looking at second quarter versus second quarter. If you look at our dedicated homeless personnel, their use of forces, so all of our HOPE teams, all of our Transit Services Division HOPE team, which is 1 in 10 officers and supervisor, and then our reset, we had a total of only 9 if we look at the time period in question. So all 9 of those use of forces on our dedicated homeless personnel was from reset. Now, if you understand what reset does, they're in Skid Row. There's 50 officers assigned to this area, and they're also responding to crimes in progress, not just doing outreach education and force protection. So these 9 use of forces in over a 6-month period is significantly below our department average, especially with the number of contacts they have daily. So our dedicated, I'll give you some data on our dedicated homeless. Sure. So if you look at our HOPE teams, our reset, and our Transit Services Division HOPE officers, they had a total of, for the 6 months, they had a total of 10,931 contacts. Of that, they had 2,072 housing referrals to LAHSA. They had 310 housing referrals to other than LAHSA. They had 258 referrals to services to LAHSA, not housing, just other services. And then 262 referrals for services to other service providers than LAHSA. I can go into our initiatives unless my partners want to speak a little bit on their data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you do that first? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Jose Garcia with LA Sanitation. Thank you for Commission for being here, Chief. So briefly, I can rattle off all these numbers, but I kind of just want to summarize that LA San has the Livability and Sustainability Division. From that came the CSLA, which is the Clean Streets LA, which is a comprehensive cleaning of homeless encampments. The HOPE team, which is an outreach kind of hit as many as you can throughout the day, and the OHS program, which is in and around Skid Row. So just kind of to summarize it, between all 3 operations, they've addressed or handled or came in contact with about 2,200 individual tents, and that's 2,200 individual people throughout the 3-month period that they've actually encountered, interacted, and made every attempt to assist and provide services. storage bags that were taken to, for storage for the homeless people. They couldn't carry it away, and for whatever reason, they needed the assistance to store their personal belongings. About 355 bags of material, 60 gallons of each bag. 831 tons of just bulk material, trash, removed during the 3-month period. 15,000, almost 16,000 pounds of feces and urine were removed from these encampments throughout that 3-month period. And about 13,500 sharps related, meaning needles, knives, any kind of weapon sharps that could have harmed the environment that these homeless people lived in. So LA-SAN is here to protect the health and environment, and we do every effort. I want to thank Commander Choi, Chief, for all your support. But we're there to support you. We can't do it without you, and I think it's been successful to this point, and we keep learning and growing. So, any questions?
Go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Nathaniel Vergara. I'm the Director of Access and Engagement for LASA. Tonight, I wanted to address a topic that we talked about at the last Commission report, which was our mechanisms for receiving referrals and responding to referrals from LAPD. I was hoping actually to be able to do a full presentation on the system that we've developed in collaboration with the county under Measure H, which is the Los Angeles Homeless Outreach Portal. Unfortunately, we don't have the AV equipment to do that, so I can do the full presentation at the next Commission meeting. But just real quickly, I'd like to explain what it is. For anybody, private citizen, law enforcement officer, elected official, any citizen within the county who wants to request services for somebody experiencing homelessness on the street, they can go to the web address of la-hop.org. There is a system that we've developed that allows folks to put in service requests directly. Our goal is to be able to respond to those requests within 72 hours maximum. Thus far, since the implementation of the program, we've received over 1,500 requests. Of those requests, and this includes requests where we've not been able to locate the individual, we've been able to close those tickets within 4 days on average.
Wow.
And that includes, like I said, both making contacts and connections to services, as well as those multiple attempts that we make to locate individuals when the referrals are not a clear referral. We have, under this system, we have over 500 outreach workers throughout the county who are responding to these requests, and that includes staff from LASA, staff hired through the Department of Health Services contracts with community-based organizations, and under the Department of Mental Health. And that is countywide. So what we're working on with LAPD is replacing the mechanism that we had of an email system for referrals. Our goal is working with Commander Choi initially to provide trainings to HOPE and to Reset officers to help them not just understand how to make the referral, but to how best to determine priority for referrals, given the number of individuals experiencing homelessness and that ratio to the number of staff who can respond to them. So we'll be working with them to help them make sure that they're entering that data with the specificity we need to be able to respond quickly and effectively. So those trainings should roll out in the next month or so. We've already begun similar trainings with LAPD and LA Sanitation on both our outreach teams understanding what the municipal codes are and the protocols for those agencies, and then vice versa in terms of training those agencies on understanding what outreach looks like, what the services are that can be provided by outreach teams, and how best to connect those outreach teams to folks that they encounter. So I'll leave it at that for tonight.
Before we open for questions, I'd like to hear from the City Attorney's Office, Councilor O'Neill, and the challenges and just an update. Thank you for coming.
Sure, happy to explain any of the other parts of the report. Our office, it does file on the cases that actually come to our office for filing. Most of the charges that they spoke about are either infractions or misdemeanors, so our office does review the cases for misdemeanor filing. In addition, we also work closely in the neighborhoods with service providers, trying to get as many cases as we can and people into services. When people come to court, unfortunately, the services are limited in the county courthouses. Our office has asked multiple times for more services to be in court so that when people are there, they can talk to LAHSA, they can talk to different social service providers. It's extremely difficult for LAHSA to fund people to come to court, but we've been trying to work on it. So when they come to court, they have another opportunity to accept services again.
Okay.
And I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Great.
General questions, commissioners?
I have some questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Commander Choi, for this. I know this is a beast of a report to put together, and appreciate all the work that goes into it. Obviously, I'm very pleased to see the decrease in RFCs. It's a very significant decrease, and this is specifically to violations that are largely a consequence of people's homelessness, and so to see a decrease there is really important, and appreciate all the work that's gone into that. I am curious though about the increase in personal service citations, particularly there's the motorbike in the freeway, there's the jaywalking, so what's happening there, and then also the while citywide use of force has gone down, use of force against people experiencing homelessness has gone up. I'll be glad to see the Hope enforcement rate super low, but just curious about why we're seeing the increase in use of force, or the proportionately an increase.
And while you answer that, I think my question sort of intermingles with it. We have a report on the felony arrests of persons experiencing homeless, and also we have arrests. I'm sorry, and also we have arrests of where the perpetrator is homeless, and I want to talk about the intersection. Do we have the statistics on how much, how dangerous, the intra-community crime?
So maybe I can answer your question first. So
Please answer all those questions in one breath.
So if I understood you correctly, I think you want to hear more about, you hear about our physical arrests and then the victimization, but we're not hearing about the actual suspects or the number of suspects within the homeless population. Is that what you're asking about?
Yes.
Okay, so we have our modus operandi codes that we use to identify homeless-related incidents, whether it's victimization, suspects, or arrests. We do have the suspect data. We are still refining the use of that code, and we're trying to get a more consistent use of the code. And until we're comfortable that that number has stabilized, we can't really compare apples to apples.
Okay.
And it's not fair to produce those numbers and say that there's this huge increase if we're just using it more consistent when we haven't used it in prior years. So that's what we do have that data. We're just not publishing it. I will tell you that we're coming out with a notice through the department that's going to re-emphasize and remind everyone to use the proper codes. We're distributing a homeless stamp. So if an incident has homelessness in it somewhere, you put the stamp on it and you can circle whether it's a homeless victim or a homeless suspect, a homeless witness, or other. And then the person inputting this into our system will key on that and put the proper code. So all these are steps to refine how we do or how we track and get more accurate data. Also, earlier with the jail in-reach, we talked about the 1942 transient address and the use of it and how they're asking the questions up front. We're also coming out with a notice to clarify the use of that. When somebody is homeless, we put 1942 in their residence address. If they have a mailing address or another address where they visit, we put that someplace else in the report. So when you run the 1942, you get a more accurate data run. So those are some of the things we're doing as a department to refine our data capture.
Okay.
The increase, motorized bicycles on the freeway. I could tell you this was a short time period. It was North Hollywood Division. They issued 43 of them, and it was on the 170
Sir, you'll have time during
I don't know
public comment to
exactly
say
what's
whatever you
going
want.
on that freeway, but it was for some reason, there's a lot of, I won't say scooters, but motorized bicycles, how they're classified, on that freeway, on the 170, and they're getting on and off, and that was that big increase. Jaywalking?
The one thing I would add is if you go southbound on the 170 freeway as you approach the 134 or the 101 interchange, you will notice on the right. You may notice on the right-hand side on the embankment is a significantly established encampment. In fact, one that's drawing a lot of safety concerns relative to the safety of the people that are there. So encampments are moving about freeway embankment areas, and I suspect that what is happening is the use of these motorized bikes that you can, scooters and so forth, are being used as a means of getting them to and from those locations. And,
I see.
And that's where, and now we're taking enforcement action to try to save some lives.
Okay.
And then the jaywalking question, I looked at that. I will say, so the largest concentration of jaywalking citations were issued in Central Division, Skid Row, but that was 9. So they're spread out throughout the city. There's not one division that's heavily focused on that type of enforcement.
That's racism.
Okay.
And then to your use of force question, although I don't have a definitive answer of why you're seeing use of forces increase in the homeless population, generally, I can say I looked at some of from the prior reports on the 148 arrests. I did look at some of those preliminarily, and although there are a couple use of forces that occur when somebody's being warned or cited for, let's say, sleeping on the sidewalk, the vast majority are for somebody's calling the police because there's a burglary suspect call, there's a theft suspect call, and then a confrontation occurs. These are incidents where officers are being called to by somebody of the public.
That's helpful. I'd love to hear too from Lhasa about the just reflections on the continued really low rate of kind of uptake of services compared to referrals, and would also love to hear from both the city attorney's office and the chief about the status of the amnesty idea.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I was writing a text when I heard Lhasa. Could you repeat that?
So glad to see the rate of referrals going up. I think that shows the system's working. But then the rate of actual kind of uptake of services and eventual moving into housing, et cetera, is very low.
So the metrics that are reported in terms of moving into housing, especially the permanent housing placements, are those that are done directly by our outreach staff, which are fairly rare in general. Generally speaking, outreach teams are connecting folks to case management services, housing navigation services that do the work of connecting people to the permanent housing resource, because that can often take weeks, if not months. In terms of the uptake of services, one of the constant issues that we face in terms of outreach is that our services are voluntary, and so in the moment when we connect with somebody, it's about being able to offer the service that is the one that they want at that moment. And depending on the moment, we may not have those specific services available. Additionally, in terms of referrals from the police, there is definite, well, I shouldn't say definite, there's anecdotal evidence to support that folks will say that they want specific services when talking with somebody with a badge. And may have a different thought when they're speaking with our outreach teams.
Meaning a more positive thought, or more receptive or less receptive?
Less receptive.
Less receptive when they're speaking to you?
Yes, because my experience is that what I've observed is that folks will answer police with the answer that they think the police want, and they're more willing to say no to an outreach worker who is. As I said, maybe not able to offer them the exact service that they want at that moment, which is why our focus is on proactive, repeated contacts with individuals, because it can take a while to build trust with folks and to be able to figure out exactly what that service is that will clinch that engagement and build the relationship of trust that we need to be able to move people through this into services and into housing.
Okay.
And I can answer your questions a little bit about the amnesty. We did form a working group with Commander Choi, our office, the city attorney's office, and the county has been helping us. The county switched from kind of an old antiquated system to a new system. So they are hopefully soon, a little bit able to give us the information we need to dismiss a lot of the cases. We were looking at older infractions and then hopefully some older misdemeanors as well. Our office did do something similar a few years back. And so we're waiting for the court to give us that data so we can look through it. It's right now, I think, over 1 million infractions was the total number, and they have to cut that down to what's in the city and then be able to tell us what kind of charge it is and all that, so we can look through and act on that.
Great, thanks.
Do we have public comments on item number 3C?
Yes, sir, we have 11 cards. The first 3, Jerry Dietrich, Adam Smith, and Mr. Novick.
Okay, welcome.
Hello, my name is Jerry Dietrich, and I'm a member of the Stop LAPD Spine Coalition and a supporter of many other organizations. I'm going to be brief because I am a brief person, so I will tell you that I read your report about this department's 2018 second quarter report on homelessness, and I was just amazed at personal service citations. There were 685 of them for things like crossing roadway against do not walk signal, walking outside crosswalk, failure to yield to vehicle, and of course, the lovely jaywalking. I think you people should realize that homelessness is not a crime.
Next speaker, Mr. Smith. Welcome, Mr. Smith.
Good evening. I know that Mr. Bryan from $1 Million Hoods answered Commissioner Goldsmith's question from the last item about the percentage of arrestees that are homeless. But some other percentages that I saw in this report were that almost a third, 32% of LAPD use of force incidents in this 6-month period were against houseless folks. And those are just what are reported. And we can imagine that marginalized communities probably report crimes from the police not as frequent as other communities might. You already talked about the citations going up against houseless folks. The man from LA Sanitation, Mr. Garcia, talked about 2,200 contacts, talked about tents. I mentioned to Chief Moore last week about Joe Reyes, who died of a heart attack after an LAPD sweep where his heart medication was thrown away. And when you talk about these contacts with tents, you're kind of everything that you do erases the humanity of these people, but you assume that, if someone's not at their tent, fuck it, throw it away. Not all homeless people are unemployed. They can't hang with just because they can't afford an apartment and they have to live in a tent doesn't mean that they don't have the right to their stuff. So I just think there's a real disconnect between how the police views homelessness and how the public views homelessness. The police see these numbers and say, well, it's working. We need more police, more police, more police. When these numbers actually show that we need less police interactions, we need less money going to HOPE teams and reset teams, and LA Sanitation, we need this money for services.
Next speaker.
Yeah, I've quoted to the commission before the statement that the law in its majesty forbids the rich and the poor alike from sleeping under bridges. And so you're enforcing a system that is inherently discriminatory. You're not dealing with the fact that homelessness and poverty in this city are racially affected. They're not neutral categories. They're related to the fact that this is a white supremacist and exploitative society. And you're not dealing with that. And if you're not, then you can't deal with the problem because you're a part of the problem. The other thing I want to talk about is the question of use of force. When I walk into this room and I'm surrounded by people carrying guns, tasers, and batons, that's a use of force in and of itself, and I don't understand why you don't recognize that. You're using force in this room to try to control the people who walk into the room. And every time the police stop somebody, that's a use of force. It doesn't mean that they're beating them up, but it means that they're intimidating them. They're using the fact that they're armed and they have a license to kill to create a situation on the street in which they can maintain their dominance. So if you're not dealing with that, you're not looking at reality when you talk about this problem. And the use of force is endemic to the police as you have it set up. That's why many of the people here see themselves as abolitionists. They want to abolish the police because the police are based on enforcing and using force to uphold a system of inequality of life. It is not quality of life policing, it's inequality of life policing. They are maintaining and enforcing the inequalities that force some people to live in the streets, that force some people to face daily harassment, that force some people, because of the color of their skin and their economic category, to be labeled as criminals.
Thank you.
The next four speakers, Jonathan Foster, Sharon Kilbride, Mimi Solstich, and Mr. Herman.
Okay, who's ever closest to the microphone, go ahead. Morning.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Kilbride. I am the chair of the Law Enforcement Coordination Committee for the Pacific Palisades Task Force on Homelessness. The Pacific Palisades Task Force on Homelessness began in 2015 when our community noticed that our beaches were lined with tents and our hillsides were filled with encampments and our homeless population was growing. The task force volunteers, we uncovered 65 camps in the Bluffs, and we had 2 fires that were set by 2 of our homeless campers in 2014 and 2015. Through the community efforts in 2017 and 18, we cleaned up 61 hillsides encampments, and 30 of these individuals that lived in their bluffs are now housed through our program. We have had great success, raised funds, and hired 2 outreach workers from the people concerned. Currently, we have 76% of our homeless off the streets in some form of housing, and we permanently house 57 individuals that were living in camps and on the streets of the Palisades for several years. We credit our success due to the support of our LAPD partners. Currently, with the support of Captain Thomas, we have 4 officers assigned to our beach detail. Last month of August, our team engaged and offered services to 98 new homeless individuals coming into the Palisades area. And I also want to say, many of our new homeless coming in are from out of state. Okay, they're not Angelinos. We're getting a lot of people from out of state that are service resistant. Our LAPD Beach Patrol works closely with beaches and harbors and county lifeguards in keeping our beaches safe and for many of the children's camps and our beachgoers. Our goal is to maintain 4 beach patrol officers and 7-day coverage, and it's highly important to maintain the same officers due to the positive relationships that they have built with our homeless and our community. We are very thankful to LAPD Officer Rusty Redican.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. You can stay and you can finish during the public comment period if you'd like to stay. You can finish during the public comment period if you'd like to stay. Next speaker.
Hi again, Jonathan Foster. 2 minutes isn't enough, you know? It's just not enough. But everybody gets to speak. And hearing you on this topic is like a violation of my ears and my mind in certain ways. And I didn't know that real officers in the commission were 2 separate groups, so that's been a reality. The commission needs a mental evaluation, I think. So the rich, hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank, the billionaires, they could change this. Except for maybe the real mentally ill, the people that we can discern are real, honest, mentally ill. And this isn't a police function. This is a function of the city council, not the police department. One big problem with accepting services is the state gets to decide the vast part of your life, and the competent people don't want this. Their basic attitude is F the state, and getting around this issue is part of that aspect. There are 36 billionaires in LA County, 100, and people with hundreds of $1 million in the bank, and they got every dollar to change this. $60 an hour minimum wage from multi-billion-dollar companies would change this, like Staples Center, the NFL, baseball, the pay of workers at like big concerts and baseball events. This would really change things. And if it was really we the people, they keep saying it's we the people, gas would be 19 cents a gallon. And you find out it's not we the people. It's going to individuals that are making bank off of all the oil, and then we got to go pay $3.50 for it. Maybe that's the reason people are driving motorized bicycles, because it's cheap. It's real cheap to drive that little motorized bicycle, and then you take it away from them. So, these are $60 an hour minimum wage. You were helping out with the NFL. Are you paying the people that are going to work there to push the hot dogs and the beer and the soda pop $60 an hour minimum wage? That would change LA.
Let's get the next group of speakers, please.
The next speaker, Mimi Soltysik, Mr. Herman.
And who else?
So you began this meeting with a moment of silence for those who died on 9/11. We know that since 2003, 204,334 civilians were killed due to violence in Iraq after the U.S. occupation. So I'd like to use a minute of my time to offer a moment of silence for the folks who have died as a result of U.S. imperialism. So your report says that 3,365 felony arrests for homelessness were made in the first 6 months of 2018. This is in a city of extraordinary wealth and a police commission with members of extraordinary wealth. These are crimes against humanity, and you're all complicit. So I just want to say, fuck you.
Mr. Herman?
Words right out of my mouth. But you see, folks, we have a program called Bridge. And in their report, Bridge says we're taking back our safe parking. Well, I know what it's like to sleep in a vehicle. I've done it in the city of Downey. I've done it in Norwalk. I've done it up there, 500 Temple. And not one motherfucker came out to help me get off the street. So when we have LASA and all these organizations such as United Way and the Salvation Army, no one wants to be treated like a motherfucking prisoner where you have to follow their rules. Where's the independent living? Ms. Goldsmith knows what I'm talking about. Ms. Goldsmith's brother is homeless. What has she done to influence his ideas to get off the street? By design, he wishes to stay on the street. By design, I wish to get the fuck off the street, Mr. Sobroff, and live in a affordable housing that I, under my SSDI, can afford to fucking pay. Incidentally, however, you heard the report. Here it is in my hands. The so-called transcripts of Mr. Choi. And what the fuck does the police department know about homelessness? And what is their engagement with homeless people? You don't know one motherfucking thing. I worked in the department. I worked for USC. I worked for the county. So apparently I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Otherwise I wouldn't use these intensifiers. But when you made me homeless, when you challenged me under mental health, and you put me in a motherfucking institution and hit me while I was handcuffed, you are rotten motherfuckers to the core. And fuck T-Fank and his fucking strip clubs. Spearmint Rhino.
Mr. President, I think it'd be a good time to inform the audience that the language that is used by the speakers, as long as it is on topic under the First Amendment, is appropriate as they're speaking at that microphone. I apologize to those who are not used to hearing that in a public meeting, but that is the public discourse that is lawful. Thank you.
Next speaker.
The next four speakers? The next four speakers, please.
We're not going to have any more speakers if the audience, sir, this is your last warning, sir. So why don't you come up to the microphone
I
now
believe
and just
he's
say
next,
whatever
sir.
you want to say and just get it over with. Let's all be quiet and let's give the gentleman the respect. He's at the mic.
Keisha Wilson's video while you're up there.
It looks to me, I mean, it just it doesn't look. There are LAPD members that are racist, white supremacist racists that kill black, unarmed, brown, unarmed people with impunity. And this council, when we brought it up in downtown police commission, this council never took action against anything that the public said. Never. And there were so many cases of police killing unarmed black and brown. And this country is full of that kind of racist against Native Americans, black, brown, unarmed killing. Do you represent millionaires and billionaires instead of we the people, like Donald Trump, who is a white supremacist racist to the core against Mexicans, Muslims, blacks, anyone of color, and probably American Indian, indigenous people. And whatever I want to say, I'm totally against the shelter bridge housing program that the mayor promotes, because most of the homeless people all over the city will be criminalized under the shelter program. The shelter program only houses a small percentage of the encampment of homeless people. And if they're not in the shelter in that district, they are criminalized by the
Thank you, sir.
LAPD.
Thank
And
you.
that's a fact.
Okay, next speaker.
The next speaker, Wayne Spindler.
Who I already knew.
Wayne Spindler, followed by Tiffany Guerra and Courtney Eccles.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Spindler. Yeah, let's keep going.
Speaking, oh, okay. She's gonna speak.
Your turn.
All right. So we look at, on page 19, we're talking about piles with rodents and cockroaches. There was an increase from 33 cockroach piles to 371 rodent and cockroach piles. And then we see rodents and cockroaches from the 27-18 Public Works Sanitation. This is literally just a disgusting report of these homeless encampments. And I mean, I really object. There's people saying outside they can't believe this meeting, that we're talking about these kinds of things in this family-friendly neighborhood like this. I mean, I forgot we're west of the 405 freeway. My mistake. I'm not allowed to be there because I've been classified as non-white by Steve Soberov, but I'm going to continue to plow through this, man, I'm telling you. Now we have a novel concept on page 21. Shane Murphy, whose brother is homeless, is now going to give out trash bags to homeless people in Hollywood. Let's give them a hand. That's why we're raising $1.1 billion in property taxes on Measure HHH to hand out glad bags to people who are homeless so they can put their stuff in it and leave it on the curb to pick up from the Bureau of Sanitation. That's your fucking answer to all this? This is how smart you are. How did Steve Soberoff become a billionaire when he's that fucking stupid? Please answer that question. I don't know.
Tiffany Guerra.
Welcome.
Tiffany Guerra with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. So in this report, we see a reduction of citations being given to the houseless in one category, which we heard celebrated very much, but we see citations increasing in every other area. If we look at the first 6 months of 2018 compared to 2017, to reiterate some of the numbers in this report, we see that there was a 9% increase in felony arrest of houseless folks, a 15% increase in misdemeanor arrest, and a 12% increase in personal service citations, which was the jaywalking tickets and that kind of thing. So even while arrests across LA by LAPD are going down overall, and use of force actually went down, citations, arrests, and use of force against the houseless population is increasing. And we know why this is happening. And we've heard this from Moore himself, and that is because the LAPD is dedicated to broken windows policing. And this is a tactic that has been completely debunked and is actually known and proven to be harmful to communities because it leads to increased police abuse, police use of force, and unnecessary citations, not only against folks who would not be able to pay these citations, but against folks who would not be getting these citations were they not black and poor. Because racial profiling and targeting of the houseless does exist within LAPD. We know LAPD stops black folks at a rate that is 5 times that of white people. We know use of force is used against black folks at a rate that is 7 times that of white people. And we know that over 30% of use of force incidents committed by LAPD are against houseless folks. We also know that if you're houseless, you are more likely to have a taser used against you by LAPD than if you're housed. So to read and hear about this report and hear this celebration of how citations have gone down in one area, no, this is not something we're gonna fucking celebrate. This report is a further documentation of the war against houseless folks and against black folks who are
Next
poor
speaker.
and folks who are
You can come back during public comment and finish your comments. So let's have the next speaker, please. Next speaker. You can come back during public comment, please. Okay, so this is your final warning. Either you come back during public comment or you can leave. Next speaker.
So what my colleague Tiffany just pointed out and what LAPD attempted to skirt around and what I just want to ensure is very clear is that the report illustrates that use of force of houseless folks has increased, and so too has arrests of houseless folks. And so I just want to point out that the scholarly evidence clearly illustrates that criminalization of houselessness is ineffective, it's expensive, and it violates both the civil and human rights of houseless people. A growing body of research comparing the cost of homelessness to the cost of providing housing to houseless people consistently shows that housing, not gelling, is extremely successful in reducing long-term houselessness. Moreover, rather than addressing the underlying causes of houselessness and helping people escape life on the streets, criminalization creates a costly revolving door that circulates individuals experiencing houselessness from the street into the legal system and back. And employing police to address houselessness has deadly consequences, as was the case for Carlos O'Connor, for Charlie Africa, for Brendan Glenn, among others. And then, as my other colleague pointed out most recently, on August 20th, Joseph Reyes, a houseless member of the Koreatown community, died. And although the official cause of death was listed as a heart attack, his blood is on all of y'all's hands and all of LAPD's hands, as LAPD threw out his heart medication 3 weeks prior to when he died of a heart attack. Housing is a human right, and the criminalization of houselessness and poverty is a human rights violation. We demand house keys, not handcuffs. House keys, not handcuffs. House keys, not handcuffs. House keys, not handcuffs.
other cards on this item, sir.
Okay. We have a motion for, a motion regarding 3C, motion for approval?
So moved.
3C? Second?
Yes, 3C, I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, let's go to item number 3D, the report regarding the complaint investigation audit. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chief. My name is Police Performance Auditor for Sergio Sais, and I'm here to report on the complaint investigation audit. I'm sure you've all read the audit, and the department met the standards on the majority of the various objectives. The three objectives where the standards were not met were on their 1C, interview of all involved supervisors, 3B, notation of audio-video availability, and 3C, audio-video interview recordings located. I'm here to answer any questions regarding the audit process.
No.
Question?
Any questions, Commissioners? Okay, let's move. Do we have any public comments? Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sir,
you.
we have three. We have Mr. Novick, Mr. Herman, and Wayne Spindler.
Novick, Herman, and Mr. Spindler.
Yeah, there are two troubling things to me in this audit report. The first one, let's see what page that's on. Hang on a second. The first one says that there were 1,642 complaints in the period from July 1st to December 31st of 2016. And of these, 151 were biased policing complaints. In other words, about 10% of the complaints were about, I would say, racial profiling or racism by the police. It says that audit is excluded from the population. I don't understand why the audit excluded complaints of biased policing from the complaints they were auditing. I find that very, very troubling, because I think those are some of the most serious complaints levied against the police department, is that they're engaged in racial profiling in terms of who they target. The second thing I find very troubling is towards the end of the report, they're looking at the criterion about whether complaints were referred for criminal process. It says, I don't see what page that is either. I don't think the pages are numbered. Oh, here's on the top, 14 and 17, let's see.
What page, John?
I think it's page 13 and 17.
Okay.
I can't find the page now, but basically they say that there was not a single case in the 6 months where a complaint required referring for criminal prosecution. I don't remember exactly when these cases were filed, but I'm wondering if, in fact, in the case of the death of Waukesha Wilson in custody, or the case of the police killing of Eric Rivera, that there was no basis for criminal referral. I believe that there were reasons to bring criminal charges against the officers involved in those deaths and killings, and I question the audit.
Commissioners, as a point of clarification, just to assist Mr. Novak, the 151 cases were excluded because, sir, they're tested under a different audit. There's a full and comprehensive audit about the intake and processing of those complaints. So rather than cloud it with the larger group, those are excluded. It's a footnote on the bottom of page 2, item 3. As to your second point, all officer-involved shootings or in-custody deaths involve the district attorney's office, and their review of the circumstances of those instances is comprehensive and done in each case. Thank you.
Mr. Spindler, you want to start the clock? Go ahead.
400 less, that's not one.
So let's let Mr. Spindler speak. If you would like to speak,
yes,
fill out a card.
Yes, the comments from the gallery are worth noting. They say, fuck you. Okay, now we'll begin. So we have Arif Ali Khan, preparing the report. He used to work for Mohammed Atta, but now he works for the police commission, and that's a step up. So you go from 9/11 to the police commission. Well done.
Speaker's off topic, Mr. President.
Let's get it
Last
done.
warning.
Oh, I can't criticize the person who prepares the fraudulent report. Okay, let's move on. Now we have methodology. Bullshit. Then we get to the next page, summary of findings. Bullshit. And then we get to page 3, findings, objectives, and comparisons. This was prepared by people in India. Bullshit. And then we get to the next item here, 4, detailed findings. They just cut and paste this from something that a kid did on an internet blog. Now we get to page 5, bullshit. Next, we get to interesting thing, page 6, bullshit, and then we continue to page 7, which we will defer on at this time without objection. Thank you. And then page 8 is bullshit, and then we get to page 9 and 10, which for the record is complete nonsense, aka bullshit. And then we get to the criterion on page 11, more garbage. And then we get to, oh, this is good, on page 12, they have something called COCs, known as COC 12, COC 13, COC 18, COC 18. That's Mike Bonnet's favorite word, by the way. And then we continue to page 13, and then we continue to
Next
page
speaker,
14.
please. Who's up next?
Mr. Herman?
Mr. Herman? Let's go.
Okay. Is that my time? That's your time, sir. Okay, I'll come back later. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Herman?
So, we all know what's wrong with credibility here. Auditors look for indications that there are no automatic judgment.
Mr. President, may I bring to your attention, Mr. Spindler continues to talk. in the
Automatic
audience and interrupt the
judgment
crowd.
that I'm referring to.
Mr. Spindler continues to talk in the back of the room and be disruptive.
Mr. Spindler, that's your last warning. If you're going to be disruptive, I'm going to ask you to leave the meeting, sir.
I would suggest you start Mr. Herman's time again.
Start at any goddamn time. The issue here is determining whether or not the documented response by this fucked up audit report is legit or not. Otherwise, Mr. Soborov is too legit to quit. And we all know where that goes. You know, being a billionaire, investigating applicable objective indications that the department managers fucked up by use of inappropriate standards to judge people. And let's get familiar with no automatic preference. That, considering that, as Mr. Boner up there listens to Mr. Jackass, regarding the submission of complete investigations for prosecuting agency. Well, so far, based on my audit and our observation, as you heard public outcry and concern over these matters, that again, your comprehensive strategy, a systemic defiance, your programmatic disregard to homeless people, to the community, and that of our rank and file. What the fuck is our rank and file doing becoming comprehensive counselors? They have no idea how comprehensive mental health is, like Mr. Soborov. See, later on during my general public comment, I'm going to make reference
Yeah, well, let's wait till your
to the so-called, what?
We'll wait.
Yeah, I got 13 seconds, fool. So, again, Brandenburg versus Ohio, number 492, argued February 27, 1969. Fuck the police.
Any other speakers on this?
We have no other speakers.
Okay, we have a motion. I'll move approval of item number 3D. We have a second? Second. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, we have a report from the chief. Chief, thank you, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners, and to the public from West LA and other parts of the city. Welcome tonight, and I join with Mr. Tiefenk, the Executive Director, in expressing an acknowledgement of the tenor of the note of the content of some of the language here, and I apologize to you relative to the use of the profanity and other obscene remarks. It is part of our democracy and a responsibility of a democracy to allow the discord to occur and to allow individuals to express their remarks, no matter how distasteful or objecting you may feel it is. Just understand that as chief, I'm discouraged by the nature of some of the remarks. I don't find them necessary in an effort for us to reach an understanding of the disagreement with the manner in which the department may act or how we go about the strategies that we employ. Having said that,
the lady in the yellow, that's your last warning. You can speak during public comment. You can't speak when the chief is speaking.
So, and regarding the significant events that have occurred in this last week, I'd like to cover 3 different events. First was I attended with Mayor Garcetti and a number of other city officials, as well as our community partners, with the opening of the El Pueblo Bridge housing development in downtown Los Angeles. Proud of the collective effort in establishing the 45 beds, 30 of them dedicated for male individuals experiencing homelessness, and the other 15 for women. It is a location that allows individuals from the immediate area who are experiencing homelessness to bring pets and to accompany their partners and to lower the threshold as much as possible to allow an intake for people as a means of transitioning away from what we know is a very dangerous and troubled environment that is living on the streets of Los Angeles. Secondly, last night I was joined by a number of our command staff and other members of the department meeting with a group that is titled Justice for Murdered Children as a task force in South Los Angeles. And these are parents, primarily mothers of South Los Angeles generally, but however in other parts of Los Angeles, that have experienced the death of a child as a result of a murder, generally in the streets. And in our discussion, we were there for a couple hours. I was welcome to hear their remarks and their concerns, their support both for our investigations, the effort of our detectives that are assigned, the family manner in which is developed a relationship between those detectives and those families who have suffered such a grievous loss, but also suggestions and ideas and soliciting us to improve the manner in which we have perhaps even members from this group, this task force, ready to respond to scenes in which a terrible circumstance such as the murder of a child occurs in support of those families that are experiencing such a dark moment. So we have formed a group, a task force under the leadership of South Bureau Deputy Chief Cotto and his command, as well as members of this group. And we'll work also with the mayor's crisis response team to find a way in which we can better facilitate that volunteerism, that community engagement. Lastly, this past Saturday, I was very proud of the department, our Behavioral Services Science section, made up of psychologists, professionals that are readily available to provide emotional support and assistance to officers as they experience their own dark times and their own tragedies and challenges to their own emotional health and welfare. September is Suicide Prevention Month in this country, and in law enforcement, it is a problem. It is a challenge. It is a circumstance that in Los Angeles affects us very personally. In the last 20 years, 16 officers have been killed in the line of duty, and during that same period of time, 36 of our men and women have taken their life. That is a number that is both sobering and tragic, and has had, and it continues to have ripples and impacts not only on the survivors of those families, but on the members of this organization. So Saturday was a day in which the organization came together to do a 5K walk and to bring to light this sometimes tabooed subject, a subject that is oftentimes pushed under the rug or swept behind into a darkened corner. And for us as police professionals, people who work together as teams, who work and will go out into uncertain and perilous times and do whatever it takes to protect each other, to recognize that we've got to do a better job. We've got to be a better partner and be willing to ask for help, but also to offer and ensure that we give help to a partner who's experiencing depression and is contemplating suicide. What was an effort that was envisioned to maybe collect 50 or 60 individuals that would be willing to do this walk and gather at this academy grounds on Saturday generated more than 700. And it was a morning that I was inspired. We have authorized a pin, lapel pin that officers, uniform officers, as well as our detective and other personnel can wear. I wear it on my shirt. That is meant to be, again, another signal or sign that the heart of LA is a heart for each other and to care for each other. So those are the 3 points I wanted to bring out in talking about the department's ongoing efforts to address the needs and concerns of the community, including homelessness. You heard tonight the significant remarks relative to the increase we've seen in violence. And as I move into crime numbers, I want to point some of that out in regards to, I typically each week, as Chief Beck did, as my predecessor, speak in detail about crime. Part 1 crime in Los Angeles, as we sit here today, we see a 2.4% reduction in overall Part 1 crime. In violent crime, it's that same number. In homicides, 174 homicides versus 185 last year. The high point of that is that we have 23 fewer gang-related homicides this year versus last year. Those are significant numbers, and I'm proud to say that the work of gang reduction, youth development, and other providers and the community itself has helped and improved and reduced the level of violence in our street. It has not and will not be an enforcement-driven success. It is a shared responsibility amongst all of us. However, facing in stark difference to that, and one that I believe as the city is grappling with how to deal with homelessness, is a substantial increase in violence involving persons experiencing homelessness. It is in part, I think, a better way that we're capturing people experiencing homelessness, so our counting of this is better today than it was 2 years ago or 5 years ago. But this year, today, we have, this year as of the end of June, we have had 16 homicides that were involving persons who were experiencing homelessness. That number was 9 last year. Wow. As we look at the numbers involving violent crime, where we had an increase of 30% involving persons experiencing homelessness, sexual assaults in that first 6 months were 102 sexual assaults involving a victim who's experiencing homelessness. That number was 59 last year. In regards to robberies, it was 238 in the first 6 months of this year. That number was 141 last year. As a department, our primary effort is the safety of all communities. And our primary effort in doing that and dealing with persons experiencing homelessness is getting resources, housing, and doing a better job as a society, as a community, to get help for people experiencing homelessness, regardless of how they got there or in what circumstance they're in. But in the midst of that also are people preying upon the homeless population and are people that are victimizing those individuals. And as we see increases in arrests of people who are experiencing homelessness, I would ask and encourage us to look at the types of violent crime, the types of felonies that are being arrested for, and you'll see a close correlation to it involving people committing violence upon other people. As I move through the rest of my statistics and stats, I'd like to talk about officer-involved shootings as at the end of 9/10 of 2018, so as of last Saturday, we've had 24 officer-involved shootings year to date. That number last year at this time was 36. We have had, of those 24 officer-involved shootings, 10 have resulted in a fatality, and as of same period last year, my apologies, it's been a long day, that number was 13, which is a 23% reduction. These are small numbers, but But I'm encouraged by this late in the year that we're seeing double-digit reductions in both the number of officer-involved shootings as well as the fatality. And as we look at a 4-year average, those numbers are similarly down in those categories as well. Moving over to our traffic collisions, this is an area that I noted some concern relative to pedestrian enforcement, citations against individuals who are jaywalking, crossing the street, standing in the street. I just want to point out that one of the areas that we're significantly seeing an increase this year versus the last 3 and 4 years is with bicyclist-involved bicyclist-involved traffic collisions and motor vehicles versus pedestrians. To give you an optic of this, year to date, we've had 76 pedestrians that have been killed by a motor vehicle. In 2014, that number was 58. As we look at the number of total collisions involving a motor vehicle and a pedestrian, it was 2,209 this year. In 2014, that number was just over 2,000. So the numbers are trending up in regards to pedestrians in the street suffering serious injuries or death. And our efforts have been both in education as well as engineering, and it is also including enforcement. Lastly, on bicyclist-involved collisions, this is even more startling. In regards to bicyclists-involved, serious injuries or deaths year-to-date account for 89 individuals. That number was 76 last year at this time, which is a 17% increase. However, if you look at of those 89, 11 bicyclists have been killed. In 2014, that's been a common anchor for me tonight on my stats on traffic, that number was 3. So these are important numbers in understanding the context of our efforts to reduce the collisions and deaths of bicyclists and pedestrians. There is an enforcement posture that's involved in that. Our primary function our primary initiative is voluntary compliance, but there are times when the most appropriate and responsible thing to do for law enforcement is to take enforcement action as a deterrent not only to the individual but also to the public around witnessing our engagement. As I move over to sworn personnel and civilian staffing numbers, our sworn personnel staffing number is 9,979. Our civilian staffing is 2,967. Our reserve officers account for 385. Our specialist volunteers are 256. We have a cadet post that's going through a academy at this point, and our total cadet numbers is 1,428. I appreciate the Commission's indulgence in a more detailed response tonight. I felt it was appropriate given the nature of some of our conversations. Thank you.
Chief, any updates regarding the scooter situation and also texting as an issue regarding these bicycle accidents and also pedestrian accidents?
So on Saturday morning, I also participated with, and we joined with the AAA Automobile Association of Southern California for distracted walking, texting while walking, texting while biking, texting while driving initiative. Again, 9 people on average, it's estimated, die each day in the United States texting and driving or texting while walking. Over 1,000 are injured. It was a 1-mile walk on that day and that morning, and I'm proud of AAA in that they embarked upon this effort with many of their employees and had hundreds of people walking from their site on Figueroa northbound on a cloudy sunny Saturday morning as an education and awareness. The City Council also has before it, it's moving forward with an ordinance relative to providing governance and controls involving the licensing of scooters and the proper use of them and the responsibilities of both the operator as well as the commercial provider. Chief Grimala, under leadership of Assistant Chief Grimala with Deputy Chief Tangarides and Commander Baeza are working closely with the Department of Transportation and our other city elected officials in crafting what we think will be responsible use of those motorized and emerging technologies.
Thank you. Are there questions of the Chief on the report? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief.
Do we have any public comments on the Chief's report?
Yes, sir. We have 10 comment cards. The first 3, Adam Smith, Mr. Novick, Jonathan Foster.
Mr. Novak, go ahead, sir.
Okay. I'm pleased to see that the chief recognizes that it's probably 2.5 times more likely that if an officer is killed, it's at his own hands as compared to anything related to being on duty. And I think that it behooves us to think about the relationship between that fact and the assignment that you give the police department. If somebody joins the police department thinking that they're going to be involved in community service and helping the community, and discover that they're actually involved in being an occupying army in communities of color and an internal border guard in more privileged areas, there's a level of pressure that's put on them by that, trying to carry out that task, that I think results in the suicides you're talking about. And I think that there's a relationship between what we've been talking about the use of force and the relationship of the police to the community and the suicide rate that you just described. The other thing I wanted to comment on, I was shocked that the chief was able to meet with Mayor Garcetti at that event because Eric has been gallivanting around the country trying to promote his national political profile, hasn't been around very much. And I guess the last thing I want to point out again is that although it's very, very pleasing that there are fewer shootings and fewer killings by the LAPD this year, that, as I pointed out last time, the chief gave these figures, the percentage of people who are being shot at who are killed by the police has gone up. And I think that's a serious problem.
Mr. Smith?
Just kind of thinking about the report today on homelessness, and we see that the use of force has gone up. You do report these statistics every week. I think one way to maybe mitigate some of the uses of force that happen obviously all the time, especially in marginalized communities, would be to report those every week instead of doing like these quarterly reports. If I feel like if you came every week and said 2 officers beat the hell out of this dude on Skid Row today, that would raise the profile of these things that are supremely problematic. And if they're not, what's there to lose from the police department's point of view? Another thing I wanted to bring up, you apologized for, and I think Commish Steve did as well, some of the decorum issues that happen in police commission. And I too, don't need to hear unnecessarily offensive language, especially if it's rooted in racism, which sometimes it is. But I do find it, troublingly ironic that the Los Angeles Police Department is unequivocally the most violent and deadly police department in the country. And honestly, if there's people in the crowd tonight that are more worried about the decorum in a police commission room than they are about the police department that's killing our communities, there's a big problem, and people should come to police commission more often.
Mr. Foster? And then after Foster, who do you have?
We have Mr. Herman Wayne from Encino and Tiffany Guerra.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Foster, and again, 2 minutes is not enough. Put some of these people in the lies that the LAPD has forced many other people in, and they will start swearing profusely, loudly, harshly, brashly, and disrespectfully because they're human, and would know that what is happening to them is grotesquely wrong and is congruent with their swearing. Police killed. You didn't account for the sheriffs and the surrounding jurisdictions departments and the highway patrol. It's well over the number you stated. Now, I have stated that I deal with suicide on a second-by-second basis, very hard to admit. And so I do thank Dr. Albert Hoffman for LSD 25, completely supported by the many, many Johns Hopkins medical centers in Maryland. There are many, many studies on depression and shrooms and the possible lasting positive effects psychedelics can provide for some sufferers of depression. And of course, it doesn't happen without Jesus Christ and the Holy Ghost. I could have helped all the suicidal LAPD officers that committed suicide. I could have helped all of them that you said committed suicide. It's too bad to think that there's real help available and it wasn't available to them, nor was it utilized by them. The Peyote Native Americans have the lowest percent of mental illness of anyone on earth, of anybody on earth. The lowest percentage of mental illness is found in the Native Americans that use peyote. But your LAPD officers didn't try peyote? Do you know they'd still be alive today?
Next speaker, please.
Mr. Herman?
Herman?
Did you know that officers that have pleaded guilty to deprivation of not my civil rights, but some other person's civil rights, intentionally make false arrests? So what does it have to do with homelessness? Well, again, it's all under the color of law. A violation of Title 18 U.S. Code Section 242, privilege protected by Constitution 42 U.S.C. 1983. Fuck you. Emotional and psychological distress based on the footnotes of Brandenburg versus Ohio 395. And let me read it into the record with no offense. How far is the nigger going to? Yeah, that is what we are going to do to the niggers. A dirty nigger. Send the Jews back to Israel. Let's give them back to the dark garden and save America, save Trump, and fuck the rest of those Koreans. Let's go back to Constitution betterment and bury the niggers. We intend to do our part. Give us our state rights, freedom for the whites, and niggers will have to fight for every inch he gets from now on. So 42 U.S.C. 141.
Mr. President, he's not speaking to the Chief of Police report.
Speak to the Chief's report. Last warning.
Of criminal syndicalism.
Okay,
And once
that's the
again,
end. Next speaker.
deprivation of my First
The next speaker,
Next
Wayne
speaker.
from Encino.
Spindler. And after Spindler.
Mr. Spindler keeps making animal noises in the room, as does Mr. Herman. They're disruptive to the rest of the meeting.
Yeah, so that's
You
both
might
of your
admonish
last
them, Mr.
warnings,
President.
making your animal noises. Okay? Can you keep from doing animal noises?
Oh, okay, sure, yeah, I'm gonna put the puppet down, yes. You know, your executive director, Mr. T-Feng, is not a commissioner, he's not an attorney.
Start the clock, please.
Please stop interrupting the meeting, Mr. T-Feng. This is your
Okay,
fair
so
and
you're off
final
topic
warning.
here also,
And
Spindler, so let's go.
According to the report, and the new commissioner should take note of this, in your report, you forgot to mention that your revision to your rules of decorum contain Rule 6D that says that the chair alone may recess the meeting. That violates 54-950 of the Brown Act. And who wrote that? A non-attorney named Mr. T-Feng wrote that. And what's happening now, it's being litigated in federal court as an unconstitutional prior restraint.
Yeah, off topic. So that's your second off topic. So your time here is finished. You can come back during public comment, say whatever you want. That's it. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker, Tiffany Guerra, followed by
Tiffany Guerra,
Eric
please.
Lafayette.
You can come back during public comment, Mr. Spindler.
Tiffany Guerra, followed by Eric Lafayette, Valerie Rivera, Mateo Nagasi, and Hamid Khan.
So in an interview this past week on KTLA, we saw you, Michael Moore, talk about the trust of the community and how much that is valued by yourself and LAPD. But at the recent hearing for LAPD's data-driven, evidence-based policing, we heard very strong statements being delivered from the community, and the black community specifically, letting you know how they feel about that word trust in your mouth, and letting you know that the trust is not there. We also saw you, Michael Moore, at that meeting, sit and listen as your own LAPD presented lies about the predictive policing programs, PredPol and LASER. and you said nothing. And you still haven't said anything about that. They sat there and lied about the programs at the hearing that was centering data-driven, evidence-based policing. But you want to get on KTLA and talk about transparency and how that's valuable to you and the trust of the community. Also, the community, specifically the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, in a community-driven effort, has demanded the release of chronic offender bulletins. And we demanded this through the Public Records Request Act, and you have denied that release. And for folks in the room who are not aware of what a chronic offender bulletin is, this is a secret bulletin that the LAPD has been creating on individuals in different communities since 2011. And these bulletins have a description of a person who has done nothing wrong, but is being targeted by LAPD as someone who has the potential to commit crime. And they are thereby tracked. This bulletin is handed out to patrols and circulated, and it is used to justify the surveillance of these folks. There are over 800 chronic offender bulletins that have been created on folks since 2011. We have filed for the release of these reports, and you have denied that request so far, and we are fighting you in court on this.
Thank you.
So you're going to sit there and talk about transparency?
Next speaker, please. Who's the next speaker?
Eric Lafayette.
Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Eric Lafayette.
Can you speak into the microphone, sir?
It's going to be difficult, but I will try.
Okay.
My name is Eric Lafayette, and I am here to show you something that will save life. It's called the Bulletproof Police Shield of Knowledge. That's what's important, because if the police with a light shield made of Kevlar is protected, very easily storable, 2 of them, in the trunk of the car, there is somebody far away, let's say it's far away, seems dangerous. You come, you're protected. You can look, you can shoot. Oh, it's a kid. You know, no big deal. You come from far away, and two people are fighting. You're a nice police officer, you're gonna prevent the fight. One of them draw a gun and shoot at you. No big deal. You can shoot back, but you will be totally protected. You will gain knowledge. Everything is about knowledge with this shield of knowledge that will protect and save lives of police officers and also of citizens. Because what the police officers are taught now is shoot first, not to be killed. I am a strong supporter of the police force, but they have no choice. Shoot first, not to be killed. Ah, yes, there is a shot. Look, gain knowledge, don't shoot. Or if the guy starts shooting at you, yes, shoot. So basically, that's what I wanted to introduce. I believe it's a very important tool. If you double it, it will stop the automatic weapon bullets. If it's only one layer, it will stop the handgun. So it's a very important changing. It will change entirely and will save a lot of lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Good evening, everyone. Let me see. Can I just take a moment of silence for all the people that have lost their lives through the hands of law enforcement, particularly this department, LAPD, and for the grieving families that are left without their loved ones in their lives anymore and are left struggling with the pain of the injustices that are being done in this department. I wonder if that thing that guy was holding right now could have possibly saved my son's life. But honestly, I don't think so, because those cops were so negligent and incompetent in doing their jobs. I know this is the chief of police's report, so I'm going to direct my comment to the chief. It's been over 2 months since we first came in contact with each other, and I asked you if you were willing to have that private meeting. I'm still waiting patiently. You know, I don't feel like it's asking for much. I just want to talk about what happened to my baby and what your input is on that, because unfortunately Chief Charlie Beck ain't here anymore, and he was a big part of that police report that he filed for Eric. And
Want to use your public comment time now?
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Sure. Go ahead.
I just, you know, I'm going to be, I'm going to continue to wait, but I mean, my patience is running thin. I'm sorry. And if you want to sit here and talk about trust and building communications with the community and this and that, you know, for one thing, you should really watch what you say around grieving families when they're in this room. Because you talk about all these, you know, people being murdered, you talk about officers being killed, but you never talk about the people that are being killed by officers.
That's right.
And, you know, you never reached out to me. I mean, all I'm simply asking is for you to hear me out. That's all. And this 2 minutes, 4 minutes, once a week ain't cutting it. And I told you, I'll do this for the rest of my life if I have to. I will, because I'm doing this. The bottom line is I'm here for my baby. That's the bottom line. I will continue to keep on, even if I'm struggling, even if I got to go and collect 10 cents, 5 nickels to get on a freaking bus to get down here. I'm going to do it, because you all need to be reminded of the injustices that are being done. And, I hate that I get worked up like this, because as a parent that lost their child through the hands of law enforcement, this isn't fair. This isn't right. You all should sit there and be, you know, more supportive towards this, because my son was murdered by LAPD. He wasn't no suspect. He was a freaking victim of this department. And instead, you guys treat me like I'm wrong for standing in his place and being his voice and getting the justice that he deserves and holding those cops accountable. Those cops need to be held accountable. They need their badges and their guns taken away because they made mistake after mistake after mistake. Not my baby. My baby was simply walking. Mr. Boner, I'm glad to finally meet you. I know you're new to this department, and I really hope, you know, you picked a really bad job to choose to be in. And, you know, I'm just telling you that much. This is a horrible job to be in. And I really hope that you can really fill in that space right there, because we need people out there that on this board. Honestly, we don't even need this board. We don't need this board, but we need, if you're going to be in that seat right there, I expect you, and I'm sure the community expects to hold you highly to make some changes in the way this department is being run, because they're all crooked up there, and they're all lying about in-policy stuff that aren't obviously in policy. And these murders of unarmed innocent people are going and not being held for the justice that they deserve. And I'm just saying, I look forward, you're going to see a lot more of me. I come in every week, and we're going to get to know each other, because I expect you to start making some changes on that.
Thank you.
Right there.
Next speaker. Sir?
Yeah, I want to talk to the people. I just want to keep the whole trust thing going. I want to talk about the DROP program. The DROP program has made our new chief, Michael Moore, a very rich man for a few weeks of false retirement. The Deferred Retirement Option Plan is an insult to the city of Los Angeles. It should stand for deliberate robbery of the people. I read this entire article searching for an acceptable reason why the LAPD more should keep, let alone have accepted in the first place, this drop windfall of $1.27 million. I don't care that the outgoing chief suggested and approved it. I don't care that the mayor approved it. It doesn't pass the smell test. In fact, it represents the most egregious example of taxpayer fund giveaway. Even its creator, Mayor Reardon, acknowledged that it was a mistake in the first place. So Moore's character is now on the table for all of us to see so soon. Will he do the right thing? His tenure as chief is already tainted, and his credibility as a leader of men and women is shot until the day he gives that money back. Okay. Which one do I got? Okay, great.
Did you identify yourself yet?
Oh, yeah, Mateo Nagasi.
I'm sorry?
Mateo Nagasi.
Okay.
I have 4 minutes. Okay, where were we? Drop participants have missed more than $3 million of work for leaves and sick time and been paid more than $276 million for the unexpected time off. Any officer or firefighter who is 50 years or older is eligible for this program. There's no screening of candidates based on job performance or attendance. What else do I have? An attorney who has been practicing for 40 years, no matter how many articles he reads about the DROP program, says that police and firefighters' pension and
Next
salary...
speaker, please.
Hamid Khan, please.
No, you'll come back during public.
It's ironic that an institution that embodies the obscenity of white supremacy, that embodies the obscenity of state violence, that embodies the obscenity of lies, obscenity of conspiracy, obscenity of murder, would sit here and point fingers at others that they are being obscene. July 24th, and Michael Moore, and thank you to Tiffany Guerra for exposing his lies. July 24th was the first time that the city held public hearings on data-driven evidence-based policing. And what we are seeing is a whole carnage, a carnage that is happening in our communities where criminality is being assigned, presumption of guilt is being assigned, and the very oath that this institution takes, the very oath which is the foundation of this criminal injustice system, that you are presumed innocent until proven guilty, has been flipped on its head. Because now, as per the data-driven evidence-based policing, you are guilty until proven innocent. Chart after chart, data after data, record after record, irrefutable evidence. The LAPD's own evidence we showed, and still there is no action on that. Dale Bonner, you've come in. Supposedly you're going to be joining Shane Goldsmith in that liaison committee on data-driven evidence-based policing. You're an old hand. You come from the establishment. You were at the Christopher Commission. You were a staff at the Christopher Commission. At least that's what Cynthia McLean-Hill had shared with us. We expect you to live up to this expectation. We expect you to hold them accountable. We expect you because what is going on is that under the guise of data, people are dying. Eric Rivera would have been killed as a result of the laser program, where criminality is assigned based on numbers, where black people are stopped 6 times more than white people, where black people are arrested 7 times more than white people, where babies as young as 9-month-old go into gang databases, where babies as young as 9-month-old, 22 of them are supposed to be
Next speaker, please.
That is the carnage.
We have
Next
no
speaker, please.
other speakers on this item, sir.
Who?
We have no other speakers on this item. We're now on public comment.
Public comment, how many speakers?
We have 19 comment cards.
Okay. Let's go.
The first 4.
I'd like to do people who haven't spoken yet. If you haven't spoken yet, will you please stand up and you have a speaker card in?
I
Okay.
believe a lot of these are first-time speakers.
Okay, well, let's let them speak first. Go ahead.
The first 4, Monica Harmon, Craig Rado, George Wolfberg, and Pepper Edmiston.
Good evening. I've seen a lot of people that are here. I understand your issues. You come every week religiously. You've been doing that for years. I'm really sorry about the people that are here that have a loved one that... Anyway, but I'm here on the other side.
Let's let her speak. She let you speak. So if you can't do that, then I'm going to ask you to leave the meeting. It's your last warning. Go ahead.
Okay. And this is the reason why so many community members can't come here, because they can't speak out for the positive that we have seen in communities and many minority communities. The Hope team is one of the best I've ever seen. They have placed so many homeless people. And what people don't understand is that it's residents and businesses that are constantly calling and complaining about the homeless, and so our officers are somewhat stuck in the middle. You know, because of lawsuits, there's certain things that they can't do. Slow Duke in the Valley, and there's so many positive stories that the public don't hear, found a homeless woman with a 2-year-old. And instead of just saying offering services and stuff, he made a point to take their name and address, post it on Facebook. The community jumped in. He helped place that woman. The other thing, Skid Row. You should see the violence, the crime,
I'm near every
Sir,
day.
you've had your time. You spoke during public comment. She's speaking during public
Well, I
comment.
did sign
If you
up for
can't,
public
she
comment.
gave
Why
you
didn't you
the courtesy. Go ahead.
Okay, it's been documented by a lot of the officers, the crimes that are committed against women especially, and the gangs have taken over a lot of that area, and they've been trying their best to clean it up.
Shut up!
Thank you. The fact of the matter is, and I know these people don't want to believe it, but there are so many positive things, and our officers have made great strides. You're not seeing it. I'm seeing it. Hundreds of community members that are involved. They want to make a difference. We want to help our communities, and, you know, I just have to give my...
Next speaker.
Thank you.
Will you identify yourself so we can move the cards around?
Yeah. I'm Craig Radouse, Studio City Neighborhood Council Board Member and Public Safety Chairman. Thank you all for your contributions to the city, and congrats to our new Police Chief, Michael Moore. Unfortunately, something is really broken. The way the Valley is being protected when it comes to adequate allocation of officers is very disappointing. I hear the concerns of stakeholders every single day. There is worry among older women, often living alone, on why they no longer feel safe in their neighborhood. There are worried fathers concerned for their family's safety, and among moms, and thank God for them, as they are the neighborhood's most vocal, who are simply exasperated with the negative direction of public safety in the East Valley. And I even hear it from your own Valley officers who are confused by officer deployment allocations. In polls conducted this year, 79% of Studio City residents feel that public safety has declined over the last 12 months. In North Hollywood, nearly a third of stakeholders stated that they've been a victim of crime over the last year. And in Valley Village, 31% of residents have to utilize public security patrol for an added level of protection. Please tell me why we can go days and not see one patrol car on the streets of Studio City, North Hollywood, Toluca Lake, and Sherman Oaks, please.
You asked a question.
How many break-ins, how many robberies, how many assaults, how much drag racing have to take place until you take the situation in the Valley seriously? I'm working hard as well. My Public Safety Committee, alongside members of additional neighborhood councils, have prepared a 22-page document outlining what we need. I will leave copies for you tonight. I am out of ideas of how to garner your attention, so now we need your action. And quite simply, please provide more officers and patrol to the North Hollywood and Van Nuys Division.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, please leave them up.
There are enough copies for everyone.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, sir.
George Wolfberg. Commissioners and Chief Moore, welcome. I'm speaking for the Pacific Palisades Community Council, of which I am the chair, as well as the Santa Monica Canyon Civic Association, and the many neighbors who frequently post on the Nextdoor app. LAMC Section 112.04, Parent C, states that no gas-powered leaf blower shall be used within 500 feet of a residence at any time. The effective date was, wait for it, February 13th, 1998. So last century, so unenforced it's a joke, especially among the operators, many of whom have total disrespect for other laws, such as having a valid business license or insurance. This has little to do with the annoying noise of the blowers, and everything to do with the schmutz expelled into the air. Fugitive dust is the word of art. It includes, according to an ARB study, hydrocarbons, which combine with other atmospheric gases to form ozone, also carbon monoxide, fine particulate matter, and other toxic air contaminants, including benzene, 1.3 butadiene, acetaldehyde, and formaldehyde. It gets worse. Many of these particles are submicroscopic and remain suspended in the air, basically forever, entering your lungs where they stay, and even passing through the blood-brain barrier. The increase in childhood asthma perfectly correlates with the increase in use of these dust blowers. 20 years ago, an officer issuing a citation would have to impound the often leaky blower and transport the miscreant to jail. Not anymore. We have the ACE program, and all the officer need do is issue a ticket, like a parking ticket. It only takes a minute or two. If officers would write up a leaf blower violator whenever seen, the problem and this threat to public health, especially the health of the operators, would be eliminated. We've been waiting for 20 years.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Hi. My name's Pepper Edmiston. I'm from Pacific Palisades. And George and I are buddies. We've been fighting leaf blowers for 30 years. But after seeing what's going on here and all these people who need help and all the responsibility that the police have, I think the whole regulation of leaf blowers should be taken away from the department and given to people who don't have such important work to do. So maybe you can consider that. Thank you. I'll take one applause. It is, I made a sign, happy 20th anniversary with no enforcement. And just because I care about people and children, and I have children and grandchildren, I just have to say this one thing. One 6-ton Raptor truck must drive 3,887 miles to equal the exhaust of one 2-stroke gas-powered blower used for a half an hour. So it affects all of you. We're all breathing in this dirt. Anyway, pass it on to a different agency.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
The next
Anyway,
four
I
speakers.
applaud the police department.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. The next four speakers, Crystal Bowser, Richard Cohen, Michelle Bisnoff, and Rick Solomon.
Hello.
Hi.
I've never been on a mic before. Like she said, my name is Crystal. I'm a teacher with LA Unified. And so, you know, with our teacher schedule, and I'm pretty sure as many of the other community members can attest to, we can't really make the 9:30 a.m. ones in downtown LA. So I just wanted to say thank you for having one in the evening so, you know, that we could come and participate. That's it.
We'll go to every council. We go to every council district. We do these meetings quarterly in the field. So, yeah, yes. Yes. Okay, next speaker.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having the meeting in West LA this evening. My name is Michelle Bisnoff. I'm here tonight as chair of the Brentwood Community Council, in addition to the Brentwood Community Homeless Task Force. As a result of the task force, we set up a Brentwood Community Trust to underwrite homeless outreach, greater access to housing, and additional workforce development for veterans. We have a very different issue for homelessness than the rest of the city. The majority of our homeless are veterans, many of whom have PTSD. So we're working very closely with the VA to alleviate some of their issues and get them into housing and emergency transitional homes as well. One of the issues that we're facing is something that you brought up earlier, Mr. Soboroff, is that we do seem to lose track of the guys after they are originally outreach. I guess when they first outreach, they get the personal information, but then they travel on and we lose track of them. One of the things that would really be helpful for us is if the LAPD had a better digital plan. And by that I mean, could we look at our sister and peer cities who are having great success with mobile applications, such as Austin and Atlanta, and implement something like that for the greater community, where we can add to that some sort of input for our homeless outreach. We are willing to underwrite a pilot program in West LA, and we've worked very closely with the West LA Police Department so far. We love them. We love our officers. They're fantastic people. Thank you so much for the best 3 captains we've had, 2 of whom are African-American women that we've recently had, and our last captain was a female, a Hispanic, and she was gay. And you know what? The LAPD rocks for us. We're very happy with you. Anything we can do to help.
Thank
but
you.
if you could work on the digital aspect, it would really help us out. Thanks so much.
So Commander Choi will be happy to talk with you tonight to make a connection.
Sir?
Good evening, Rick Solomon. I'm here representing our small HOA of 1,300 homes in the Beverlywood HOA, which is just outside of Cheviot in Century City. I'm also one of the 60 or so participants in the LA Community Police Academy. This is actually my second semester of it, which is great, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the senior lead officers that we now see on a regular basis and have a great relationship with them. And we've learned quite a bit on how the police dispatches and patrols, and unfortunately, you know, even though we have close to 10,000 sworn officers, unfortunately there's only 7 in the field technically driving black and whites in all of West LA. And you know, I'm thinking the numbers, when you take the 10,000 divided by at least 3 for 3 shifts, you know, it doesn't leave that many people in the black and whites. And I realize that you have all the different categories of police officers, but we have our own 3 ACS cars that we pay, I hate to say, about $700,000 a year for 3 cars, 24 hours a day. And quite truthfully, I've lived there my whole life. I know on record they've caught one, or they've stopped 1 burglary. That's it. So we need to do something, and I know that we have that opportunity to get that little, I don't want to call it a police car, but it's more of a little BMW that we become as citizens. We become patrol in our own neighborhood. Obviously, we know the neighborhood much better. We know the neighbors, we know the people. Someone like me that works in the neighborhood as a plumber, you know, I see what's going on, and I think it's a great program. I think everyone else that's been complaining, honestly, sign up for the class. It's free. You'll learn a lot, and you'll get a better appreciation of how the system works. And this really caught me off guard tonight. I didn't expect this type of a meeting. I really didn't. I thought it was going to be, I hate to say, more professional. But
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
The next 4 speakers, please.
Next speaker.
Ron Milal.
Mr. Edmiston, welcome, sir. Thank you for all you do.
Mr. President and members, I came here to say something different. What I'm going to say now is my appreciation for your forbearance, your endurance, and I have to say an apology for the fact that our civic discourse has come down to this level. And I'm committed, and I hope all of you are, let's elevate the civic discourse. Let's not have the catcalls. Let's try to come together. And Mr. President, I really appreciate your efforts in that direction.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Did we have Richard Cohen? Did he speak? Ron Milal, Amy Wang.
Migdal. Ron Migdal. I don't have any prepared comments. Hi. I'm a member of the West LA Neighborhood Council and chairman of the Public Safety Committee. And I just want to let you guys know that we love our cops in West LA. I'm appalled at some of the things that were said tonight, that someone who has no professional certification or data to back it up would make that comment about officers committing suicide. Just appalls me. And being homeless is not a crime, nor is it a privilege. Police don't arrest people for being homeless. They arrest them or cite them for crimes that they commit. Being homeless doesn't give you a license to commit crimes. I just want to thank you all for protecting and serving us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Except for my son Eric. The next speaker, Amy Wang, followed by Savannah Gardner, Phoebe Abramowitz, Patrick Hart,
Let's
Mr.
go.
Novick.
Who's up? Go ahead, please. And just get in your
Just
order.
state your name, please.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I'm Patrick Hart. I'm with the Pacific Palisades Task Force on Homelessness. Good evening, Chief Moore and members of the Los Angeles Police Commission. I am here this evening to comment on the LAPD working on behalf of the Los Angeles homeless housing problems with 3 points and 4 asks to consider. 1, bearing in mind that the Palisades is an end-of-the-line beach city destination, I believe our Palisades Homeless Task Force model of carrot and stick, or more clearly stated, outreach on the one hand with by-the-book enforcement of existing statutes on the other, might be useful to consider in trying to implement with lots of outreach workers and the LAPD HOPE team in LA's 87 other cities. Our latest PPTFH stats tell us that of the Palisades homeless who have agreed to work with the People Concerned outreach team are 52% housed or otherwise off the street. Conversely, I guesstimate using metrics we got from a Captain Tina Nieto presentation over a year ago that the LAPD's 4 HOPE teams have, with all due respect, about a 6 to 8% success record. Why? Point number 2, consistency of enforcement and outreach personnel. A, because we Palisadians raised over $500,000 to fund our outreach team from the People Concerned, who worked only with the Palisades, coupled with B, the fact that Officer Rusty Redican has remained a constant enforcement go-to, who thinks out of the box to work with us, changing his hours and days week by week, based on basically only 3 or 4 of us on the enforcement committee are observing as far as our 6 to 9 homeless still on the streets and the plethora of the new homeless we are seeing entering the Palisades.
Thank you, sir. You can leave the rest, and we'll certainly read it if you want.
Thank you.
Just, yeah, leave it with the officer.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for all you're doing. Hello.
Hi, my name is Phoebe. I am disturbed but not surprised that this commission is still having meetings that are at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday in downtown LA with dozens of armed and uniformed police officers. That should not be the case. It's very clear that your conception of yourselves and the community's conception of the LAPD are not matching up, and it's your responsibility to make these accessible to everyone. You know that folks want them to be in different parts of the community and later and not in the LAPD headquarters, and your refusal over several years to move all of the meetings, I think, is indicative of a larger problem where you're talking about wanting trust in the community, but this is a very clear thing that you could do and you have not done it yet. And every single meeting deserves to be accessible to folks in the community. Not some of them, that's not nearly sufficient, and you don't deserve a pat on the back. And having all of the meetings accessible to people in the community is well below the bar of your responsibility, and I beg you to do so.
Thank you.
My name is Savannah Gardner. I'm here to second Phoebe Abramowitz's disturbed nature of the fact that that this commission continues to hold inaccessible meetings, both physically and, sorry, I just got dental work done, both physically and geographically inaccessible meetings to the very people that you know that come to your meetings. That's anti-Black in nature, and you all choose to make that decision happen. I'd like to also say that my father was a first responder during 9/11, and before you give me your condolences, I want to say that if you're going to hold a moment of silence for those first responders and the family of their first responders on a court of state-sanctioned violence, then you should also hold a moment of silence every meeting for the 400 that have been killed by LAPD and associated offices. And not doing so is making a very clear distinction between what you accept as state-sanctioned and what you don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anyone, is there anyone in line to speak that hasn't spoken yet?
What about us people? We signed up. I signed up. How come you don't call my name?
Who hasn't spoken, or who hasn't spoken, but you'll speak after. I just want to give the other people who haven't been speaking and who haven't been.
Hi, everybody.
Go ahead, sir.
It's a pleasure to be here in your community here on the west side. I've been going to all the meetings downtown. What an experience to have to go down there downtown. It's very, very hard.
Thank you.
I started coming to these meetings when Waukesha Wilson died in the jail. And we still don't have answers, and there's missing video. So here I am today, police commission chasing. Where's the lady that just spoke? Yeah, all those that are speaking about the timing, when you hold your meetings. On Tuesday mornings, we've been going, suffering there, begging them to hold the meetings in our neighborhood, in the northeast and the east, where the people are being killed. And look what he's doing. He's bragging that, oh yeah, we'll hold our meetings once a month over here in this community.
Once a quarter.
Yeah, whatever. It's not even specified anywhere on your website. So here we are, police commission chasing to the west side. I don't even have a car, half employed, to get over here. It was okay because luckily this is beautiful. I'm learning to do online and follow the map. It's beautiful. So it's nice to be here. The sounds of the kids on the skateboard, it's kind of nice here. I like it. So let's establish this. Oh, and then there's no security thing. There's no tunnel that I got to go through and then take off my belt, and then they give me all kinds of reasons why to go in and out again into that tunnel to inspect whether I have guns, and then I have to come to a calm meeting. So that doesn't happen here, so this is good. What else do I like here? We can bring our coffee and our water bottles. You should see the rule they made against us downtown who go all the time. We can no longer take coffee with us in those meetings. Who made that rule up? Me. It was just suddenly made against us, that rule.
Next speaker, please. Next speaker. What's your name, sir?
Eugene.
Eugene, welcome, sir.
Yeah, I guess wanted to speak more to the people and kind of address how useless this commission is. Of the over 400 people that have been killed by the LAPD, not one single one of them have been prosecuted, and this commission has not ruled one of those cases to be suspect or put a red flag on it. They have not once held any officer accountable, even when the former police chief, Beck, who was a horrible police commissioner, or police chief, I should say, actually advocated for a discipline to happen. The commission, which is supposed to represent you and I, by the way, still ruled in favor of the officer. So it's clear that this commission's main function is to basically is to basically, I guess, support itself. You know, Soboroff is a billionaire, and I think to Soboroff the most important thing is to make sure that the police protect his property. Everything else is irrelevant to him. That's why he doesn't care about anything other than the people. I mean, the type of respect that he seemed to have given a lot of the people from the West Side is the type of respect I have not seen him give to people of color or the communities that are from the non-wealthy, affluent areas. And that kind of includes, I don't want to just single out Soboroff, although Soboroff is the kind of Trump of this, kind of commission, and that anything he says goes. And it doesn't matter what facts you bring up, it doesn't matter how strong your case is. Nevertheless, Soboroff will not listen to you, because to Soboroff and to this commission, it's more important that, I don't know, what is your function? Why is it that you do not listen to the people? To keep your eye on the clock, what if I just complimented you and said, here's a little like kickback?
Your time is over. Next speaker. Mr. Novak.
So this morning I was at the Board of Supervisors along with people who are concerned about rent control and enacting the initiative measure to give the Citizens Oversight Commission for the Sheriff's Department more teeth to try to have that enacted immediately. And it struck me, and it struck me again here, that when I go to movement activities, when I go to the vigil outside Jackie Lacey's headquarters, the first thing we talk about is what it says on my shirt, stolen land. We're on native land. This is the land of the Tongva people, the Chumash. When they had sovereignty here, there were no killings by police because there were no police. There were no homeless people because there was a different social system. There was a system based on respect for human life and respect for all of nature and all our relations, none of which is exhibited by this agency or by the LA Police Department. I want to address myself briefly to the people of European descent like myself who came here today to say how much they appreciate the police department, how much respect they receive, what a positive relationship they have. I want you to think about why that is, why there's such a discrepancy between the relationship the police department has to communities of color in the city and to communities with greater privilege. The police function as an occupying army in certain communities and as an internal border guard in others. And if you're demanding more policing, that's what you're asking for. You're asking for police to act as an internal border guard against people you find uncomfortable in your own communities. You need to interrogate yourself, not just the police department. And the last thing I want to say is that the nature of the system is such, I'll repeat what I said about suicides, we're not talking about the individual officers or their individual biases, we're talking about the charge that is given to this police department to enact and enforce a system of white supremacy and colonialism, and the cost that has on them as well as on all the communities that are policed in that way.
The next four speakers, Amy Wang, Audrey George, Michelle Dumont, and Tamara?
Go ahead.
On LAPD's digital policing that this one woman was raving about, LAPD's predictive policing is digital policing, and it targets the usual suspect, black and brown communities, youth, unarmed, as criminals. And when propaganda is masked as public discourse, that's more propaganda. And when people rave about the police, they usually come from segregated society, maybe very wealthy or somehow segregated. They don't know what it's like to be the victim and targeted by the police on an everyday basis. And Martin Luther King talked about segregation. He was against it, and he was opposed by white supremacists, KKK people that are still around today under Donald Trump, and they are rising up, and there's a lot of people that takes that position, segregation, and they don't understand what it's like to be targeted by the police. They probably never experienced racism. And sometimes racism comes in a subconscious form. Although like the KKK, it's right out in the open. They know they're racist. But there's a lot of people that are subconsciously racist, and they believe in the LAPD propaganda. It's all propaganda.
Next speaker. Go ahead.
My name's Tamara. Good day. First of all, I'd like to honor the fact we're on Tongva, Chumash, Hachiman, and Tatavian land. You're on stolen land. You're occupying stolen land to this day. 500 years of colonization. One of the topics I want to bring up is you spoke on being civilized. What has been civilized since the colonizers have landed here? You stole the land. You committed genocide. You've enslaved the people. And your institution has continued for 500 years. There are 400 LA residents, including children, that have been murdered. This lady right here, I saw your disrespect when Ms. Rivera was speaking. You didn't even look at that mother who lost one of her sons. He was 17 years old. He was walking down the street and was murdered. How about today is a sacred day for Ethiopia, Melkem Medisamet, which is the Ethiopian New Year that the U.S. government desecrated and committed murder on 3,000 U.S. citizens and swept it under the rug so they can further a war agenda in Afghanistan and Iraq. And this is a police state. You are furthering your agenda of the U.S. government here. Your time and your presence is unwanted. We're asking for accountability, and we're asking for prosecution of killer cops. We're demanding it at this point. It's a disgrace that 400 residents have been murdered and not one cop has been prosecuted. We stand in front of Jackie Lacey's office for almost a year now, and that DA cannot even come out and speak to the families. You have police officers and sheriffs laughing at mourning mothers. They have lost their only children. This is a disgrace to the community and a disgrace to our society. And how anybody of color can work for this institution is beyond me, because you're working for the people that enslaved our people and committed genocide.
Speaker, please.
Prosecute killer cops.
You can start the clock. Start the clock.
So I do appreciate this community meeting in the evening, but I am not under any false understandings about whether this body respects it all, no matter how much support we show for something, how many facts we present, the passion we show. This body's always been totally dismissive. It purports to be a civilian body, while the president of this body wears his police jacket and has a big police sign on his car, and there is no way this is a civilian commission in any spirit or practice. The truth is that this PC hates that the community activists come to these meetings, hates that we demand accountability for actions by the police, acts as though we're violent people who need armed cops surrounding us every meeting, and targets black and brown activists for arrest and prosecution, hates that we ask them to stop being a rubber stamp on LAPD reports and disciplinary actions, hates the family members reminding them that victims of police violence are human beings who have been robbed of any chance for trial, hates that we remind them about the promise of the presumption of innocence that is never materialized, hates that we call out the relationship between surveillance tools and racist policing, hates that we demand audits of and cessation of racist tools like SARS, Predpol, and laser, and broken windows policing, hates that we call out when cops kill unconvicted people, presumed innocent, and bystanders, that they should add those murders to homicide statistics, hates that we demand cops stay out of the realm of mental health and homelessness.
Speaker, please. Next speaker.
I'm Michelle Dumont. You've heard this number 400 mentioned, and you may wonder where that came from. I think I'm the one who came up with it. I have the names of over 418 people who have been killed in Los Angeles County since January 2013. I do not have the names of another about 42 to 50 others. Now, my statistics don't at all jive with Chief Moore's statistics. You know why? Because he doesn't count in custody deaths. He doesn't count vehicular deaths. He doesn't count assault deaths or taser deaths. Those are not counted. He's only counting fatal shootings. And that is a misconception, a very grave misconception about how many people are dying at the hands of the police in this county and the LAPD. I have 15 for this year. 15 names, and they're still counting. Now, the other thing that you need to be apprised of is I think you actually have done something. And what you have done is you have participated in the whittling down and the demeaning of all of the people who come. Valerie, who comes to talk about her son's death. All of the people who come to talk about the deaths of loved ones and to talk about these deaths that are hurting all of us in this city and in this county. You have now brought about the prosecution of Melina Abdullah, who is now standing charged for 8 counts for doing nothing at police commission meetings, being observed doing nothing. Doing absolutely nothing but exercising her free speech. You work in collusion with the prosecutor's office. That's why there are no prosecutions of these cops.
Who's next?
Adam Smith, please.
Mr. Smith?
Followed by Jonathan Foster, Tiffany Guerra, Hamid Khan, and Mr. Spindler.
And that's it?
And then we have 5 more, sir.
Okay.
I would just kind of lift up one of the points that, or all of the points that Michelle said, but she is much more articulate than I am. A lot of the folks from West LA that has spoken tonight about their appreciation for the police, you know, I can see where that comes from, because like people have said, they are doing their job in their eyes. I've lived in this neighborhood for 15 and a half years since I moved out here as a stoned young pizza delivery guy from Massachusetts. And I don't see police in this neighborhood, but I also don't see that much crime. And because, you know, you all choose who and what to criminalize, even though supposed crime happens, you know, across the board evenly. I have done as much drugs as anybody that's been arrested in a black or brown neighborhood. Studies show that. I don't know that for sure for myself. Another point that I want to lift up that Michelle shared, the people from the community that spoke, they also all left right away, so none of them are here anymore. Hopefully a couple of those folks are still here, but one person spoke about like how people show up every week. I'm one of them. When I can, and how that's somehow a bad thing. The Stop LAPD Spine Coalition has been showing up to police commission meetings for, I don't know, Hamid, what, 6 years? 8 years? And they just did, the LAPD finally just did a hearing on data-driven evidence-based policing. So it might be annoying for people to come and hear about actual violence against the community, but it's people like the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition that gets this fucking board to actually do something, so.
Hi, Jonathan Foster again. Not everybody appreciates my exact position. I never get to state it because there's only 2 minutes, but let's hear a little bit from the Navajo Indian Police. Let's hear this one.
There's always that potential that a person might fight us, resist arrest. The majority of the officers who are killed in the line of duty, they're killed with their own firearms.
As Officer Christopher Holgate prepares to go on duty in the Navajo Nation's Window Rock District, he will be one of only 6 patrolmen. This weekend, he will be one of only 6 patrolmen on duty in a district the size of Los Angeles County. Like most Navajo officers, Holgate rides alone. Budgets are too tight, and the force is spread too thin to allow for partners. In a landscape where backup might be 50 miles away,
Backup is 50 miles away, and there's only 6 police officers for a span the size of LA County. And that's how they got to 9/11, which is a shame, an inside job, is they had to kill off all the Indians to finally get to another Pearl Harbor, is what they said. Does anybody know that they were moving gold the morning of 9/11? They moved all that gold out of there. And then there's 28 pages that are blacked out. So we know it's an inside job. And I look at the police commission, this guy, he doesn't walk the street with a gun or a badge, and he hasn't really done any police work. I admit I haven't either. We got real Indians out there, only 6 Indians to the size of LA County. Like 2 of you got to get out of here, and everybody outside's got to go, and that's all the police. They said they don't have enough funds. Well, how did you get all the money you got, buddy, without killing all the Indians? And then you get to make money off of this? This is why I'm so ashamed that my family is who they are, and then you get to kill people around here.
Thank you.
Hamid Khan, please. Followed by Mr. Spindler, Eric Lafayette, and Mr. Herman.
And that's it?
And two more.
Last time this commission came to this side of town was when they were having these public meetings on drones, if you all remember that. And I think that's the shamefulness that we need to expose as well while we are at it. So the LAPD acquired drones, and they did this whole charade of going out into the public and having these public meetings. They had 4 public meetings in the city of Los Angeles, all at the same day, all in the same evening, starting at 6 o'clock. When they came to UCLA and in that neighborhood, everybody overwhelmingly rejected the drones, to the extent, and the assistant chief is sitting right here, who lied to the community, that to the extent that out of 1,600 emails, only 97 agreed with them. Out of the 1,100 surveys that they did, only 7 agreed with them. But then they still went ahead and approved the drones. This is the kind of community service that they do. This is how they respond to the community. This is how they respect the community. That's one. Secondly, last week Michael Moore was on TV and Tiffany Guerra talked about it, but he also talked about 1421, SB 1421, a law that just went into effect, and well, not into effect because Brown has to sign it. And it's ironic that 40 years to the day, Brown was the governor in 1978 who created the law in the first place. It's about transparency, it's about secrecy, that even California is the only state out of the 50 states that even prosecutors can't have access to files of police misconduct, including sexual assault. Right? So but Michael Moore, as he's speaking about transparency, his department wouldn't release basic documents like the chronic offender bulletin. They want to go to the extent of fighting this in the court. They will end up paying attorney fees because we will win. We have an open lawsuit right now going on, but this is the kind of bullshit that we hear, and this is the kind of smoke and mirror that we see all the time. They come in, they reject the community, they disrespect the community.
Mr. Spindler.
Mr. Spindler? Who else?
Eric Lafayette, Mr. Herman, Mateo Nagasi, and Courtney Eccles.
Okay.
That's it.
The other one, would you like to line up, please, so we can cut down on the travel time?
So you see what happens when you try to take the tongue out of a man to speak. It's because that man has something to say. And Mr. T-Fang right now is really trying to cut this off because Rule 6D of your rules is in violation of state law. And November the 10th, 2015, Mr. Johnson, then the president, is being sued personally for liability because he recessed a meeting without a vote of the members of the quorum of the police commission, Mr. Dale. And you need to get rid of Rule 6D. Now, this guy, T-Fang, who is he? He's not an attorney. He's not a member of the board. He's not an elected official. He used to be the police chief of some little city somewhere. What the fuck is he doing here? Interrupting speakers. What is he doing legalizing and creating legal documents that are getting the city sued in federal court? Guy has to go. It's a disgrace. He's a relic. And what you needed to do was get this woman here to be your police chief. We needed to have somebody other than the same clique of white, pasty fuck police chiefs. We needed to go in another way, and we failed to do so. Now, she pulled out, and the reason she pulled out is obvious. She threatened her. She was the leading candidate. Because Mr. Moore 2 years ago said, oh, I don't want to ever be police chief, until Beck resigned. Then he wanted to be the police chief. And he's the police chief for the same reason that Beck is the police chief, because he has the files on all of our elected officials that Beck left him before he left to his ranch. See, they know everything that all of our elected officials have done, like Mr. David Rue's 2002 rape of an unconscious woman that he got away with. So, Mr. Dale, you need to get off this commission. You know why?
Thank you for your analysis, Mr. Spindler. Next.
You look like a
Next.
Eric Lafayette.
Next. Spindler, your time's up.
Mr. Herman.
We escort Mr. Spindler out of the meeting, please. Mr. Spindler, you can leave the meeting.
Don't associate with trash. You become trash.
Next speaker.
So now you see how they try to suppress public speakers. Intimidation, retaliation. the same plan LA City is doing with their so-called ban and bar public speakers for simply waving their hands or gesturing to Steve Soboroff and his gay son, fuck you. You see, we need Ms. Goldsmith to speak up about homelessness because she knows exactly where the fuck I come from. Knowing about homelessness, knowing about how to survive in the motherfucking street when you're fucking down and out. H, bitch, bitch, bitch. Now, see, there's no rebuttal by Mr. Guerra there because he knows the 54-950 to 54-963, the Brown Act, protects us to criticize elected officials or anyone in their capacity that wishes to remain open-minded. But again, I'm telling you, we've been targets of suppression by white niggers who think under Brandenburg versus Ohio, 1969, number 492, approved by the United States courts, February 1969. The ruling is, as they put it, fuck the Jews and send them back. Fuck the garden that I wish to build. Let's build a new Jew garden and hang an ornament, not a man, but an ornament. The same T-Fang ornament that sits in this room, interrupting public comment, throwing out his point of view of what he believes is the law. Fuck T-Fang the way you fuck the cadets, and the same way he fucks those young women at the Spearmint Rhino because he has a flashy suit and a flashy badge. Go fuck yourself under 42 U.S.C. 1983, and God bless America. Trump, Trump, Trump.
The final speaker, Matteo Nagasi.
I think he would. He seemed like he was. All right, cool. Thank you. I'm not going away, by the way. Lots of good stories here. LA's new chief pretended to retire and got $1.2 million for it. Cash in on a controversial, costly program from the city's new top cop. Los Angeles' new police chief is a $1.27 million beneficiary of a controversial city retirement program that is so costly and prone to abuse that other cities have tried and have since abandoned it. Hold on. Moore is not accused of bilking the program in any way, but there is some very curious timing going on based on what the Los Angeles Times was able to track down. Moore actually did retire in January when his 5-year stint in the drop program ended. That's required for you to get the payday, but only retired for 30 days, took a road trip, visited his daughter, went skiing, and then returned to the job in March and resumed earning $299,000 a year. Oh, and since he retired, he is also bringing home $240,000 in annual pension. Yes, sir. Why does the timing for all this matter? The chief of police is not eligible to participate in the drop program. If Moore had been promoted up to the chief position before he retired, he would have needed to agree to give up the $1.27 million that had been set aside. So the big question, one that may prove unanswerable, is whether Moore retired and came back specifically so that he could get the extra money before being promoted to chief.
Okay, is that it?
Ultimately, $1.27 million is a drop in the bucket because the city has been giving away $1.6 billion to police chiefs and police officers for doing nothing.
Next speaker, please.
That was the final speaker, sir.
The lady in the yellow shirt, would you escort her out, gentlemen? Oh, is that it?
That was last speaker.
We have a motion for adjournment? Second, all in favor?